Chapter 189. After the end of the disciple recruitment, Qin Shujian started to prepare for the construction of the city. Initially, he had planned to transform the outer sect disciples' village at the foot of the mountain into a city. However, after thinking about it carefully, it would be inappropriate to transform the city directly. After all, there were no other forces in the Liang Mountain area besides the Origin sect. Therefore, he decided to build a city at the border between the Stone Forest and the Origin sect. This was to accommodate people from all over the world and to provide a better place for trading when he recruited disciples in the future. Building a city was not a small matter. Just the amount of silver needed to be spent was in the millions. If not for the fact that Yuan Zong had such a large additional income, Qin Shujian would not have dared to even think about it. In this world, however, all powerful sects would build a city near their sect. Everything else aside, after the city was built, the income from all aspects would be stable for a long time. This would be very beneficial for the development of the sect's foundation. However, there were very few sects in the Baiyun Mansion's true dominion that had reached this stage. After all, no matter how powerful a true dominion sect was, it was limited. Sects like the Origin sect were extremely rare in the true dominion of the Great Zhao 13 prefectures. In the Baiyun Mansion, it was the only sect that could do this. The other sects did not have the qualifications to build a city, but the Origin sect did. After making the decision to build a city, Qin Shujian headed straight to the Flying Leaf City to meet City Lord Zhang Baiqing. In the main hall of the City Lord Manor, Zhang Baiqing and Qin Shujian sat on either side of each other. The servants served tea respectfully and then left. Sect Master Qin, please have some tea. Please. Qin Shujian smiled and nodded. When he picked up the teacup, the faint tea fragrance mixed with spirit qi floated in the air. He praised, I did not expect to taste spirit tea at City Lord Zhang's place today. It seems like this trip was worth it. Even a city lord could have spirit tea. He was a sect master, yet he still used mortal tea leaves. This time, Qin Shujian was even more determined to purchase some spirit tea. Sect Master Qin is no ordinary person. How would this old man dare to use ordinary things to entertain you? Zhang Baiqing chuckled, but his heart was bleeding. He used to be the city lord of an ordinary city. Even though this place had been upgraded to the true dominion, their salaries and other aspects had not increased. For Zhang Baiqing, one tael of spirit tea was enough for half a month of his salary. However, the person who had come today was the sect master of Sky Origin sect. On the surface, they had to treat him well. After all, Yuan Zong had played a huge role in Fei City's stable development. Not to mention anything else. Just the fact that the Origin sect was in charge of the Liang Mountain True Dominion meant that no one dared to invade it. This also saved the Fei City a lot of trouble. Or else, in the same region, if the Imperial Court and the sects did not get along, both sides would suffer. Not to mention the Liang Mountain True Dominion. The power of the sects completely crushed the power of the Imperial Court here. After some small talk, Zhang Baiqing went straight to the point and asked, I wonder what Sect Master Qin is here for this time? The Origin sect is preparing to build a city at the border between the Liang Mountain and the chaotic Stone Forest. Therefore, I came to inform City Lord Zhang. It would be best if I could get the approval of the Imperial Court. Build a city. Zhang Baiqing was stunned. He had not expected that Qin Shujian would actually come here for this purpose. However, after thinking about it, he felt that it was reasonable. Given the Origin sect's power, it was not surprising that they would build a city within their sphere of influence. As for this, Zhang Baiqing had heard about it long ago. Sect Master Qin, this old man will report this matter to the higher-ups. I believe that it won't be long before the corresponding approval will be issued. In that case, thank you very much, City Lord Zhang, Qin Shujian said with a smile. Since the other party had agreed so readily, he did not need to waste too much time talking. After all, this was the Great Zhao country. If the Origin sect wanted to build a city, they still needed to inform the nearby Imperial Court forces to prevent unnecessary misunderstandings. As for whether there would be any approval, this was not the main point. At most, there would be an official approval document. If there was no approval document, building a city would not be proper. However, others would not be able to find any problems with it. Zhang Baiqing said, This is only a small matter. How long will it take for the approval document to come down? The shortest would be 7 days. The longest would be half a month. When the time comes, the approval document will definitely come down. Zhang Baiqing thought for a moment before giving an answer. 7 days to half a month. It wasn't too long, and it was within Qin Shujian's expectations. Soon after, Qin Shujian stood up and said his goodbyes. Since that is the case, I will leave this matter to City Lord Zhang. This time, I have wasted a lot of City Lord's time. This Qin will not disturb you any longer. I will take my leave first. This old man will send Sect Master Qin off. Zhang Baiqing also stood up and left the City Lord's mansion with Qin Shujian on the left and right. After leaving the City Lord's mansion, the two said their goodbyes. Qin Shujian directly left. Zhang Baiqing looked at the other party's departing figure before finally turning around and returning to the mansion. After settling this matter, Qin Shujian directly returned to Liang Mountain. Then, he sent Su Yuanming to Nine Mountain City to discuss with the carrier trading company about purchasing materials and preparing for the construction of the city. Also, if the carrier trading company has spirit tea, buy some back. In the end, Qin Shujian reminded him. Although Su Yuanming was a little puzzled, he still nodded in agreement. Then, Qin Shujian went to the mission hall and issued a mission related to alchemy and weapon forging techniques. The mission rewards were quite generous, attracting the interest of many players. Then, there was a change in the mission of collecting techniques and skills. It changed from anything to anything above the true rank. Sect Master, In front of the library, the inner aura cultivator guarding the door stood up and bowed. Qin Shujian nodded and directly entered. Compared to the previous time, this time, there were many people on the first floor of the library. The martial arts manuals collected from the destruction of the 7 sects filled the first 2 floors of the library. The large amount of martial arts manuals was enough for all the outer and inner disciples to learn. Walking up to the 3rd floor, the number of people here was not much less than the 2nd floor. After filling up, the number of true rank martial arts manuals on the 3rd floor had reached more than 300. For the current inner disciples, especially the players, although mortal rank high-grade martial arts manuals were still the mainstream, only those at the true rank could increase their strength by a large amount. Therefore, compared to the mortal rank martial arts manuals on the 1st and 2nd floors, the true rank martial arts manuals on the 3rd floor were obviously more attractive. As for the 4th floor, the true rank martial arts manuals on this floor had all been moved to the 3rd floor. Only the spirit rank martial arts manuals and the divine rank middle grade Great Desolate Devil Suppressing Seal were placed here. At this time, there were also deacon elders. When they saw Qin Shujian, they all stood up and greeted him. Qin Shujian nodded slightly and walked up to the 5th floor. It could be said that the first 3 floors of the library were not lacking in martial arts manuals. Although there were few on the 4th floor, it won in terms of quality. It was enough for Yuanzong at this stage. Only the 5th floor had always been empty. For the time being, Qin Shujian couldn't think of anything suitable to be placed here. Then, he turned and walked down. He walked through the entire book collection pavilion. To tell the truth, Qin Shujian still felt a sense of accomplishment. Back then, Yuanzong had been empty except for people. Now, Yuanzong was much stronger than before. Even its foundation was deep enough. Even without him. With Yuanzong's current foundation, it would not be a big problem even if it was passed down for hundreds or thousands of years. Now, the vitality was proceeding in an orderly manner. Qin Shujian did not have too many things to explain. After thinking about it, he still felt that it was necessary to talk to the heaven and earth Bao. On the peak of Mount Liang, this was still the forbidden area of Yuanzong. Usually, other than Qin Shujian, no one else, including elders, was allowed to set foot here. Sensing someone coming, the heaven and earth Bao stopped absorbing spiritual energy. An old voice sounded, "Greetings, Sect Master. You go first. If the 1,000 Mountain Blood is worshipped by tens of thousands of people, it will have a trace of Zhu Bing's power. Do you know how to do this?" Qin Shujian went straight to the point. Ever since the other party mentioned Zhu Bing to him, he had been thinking about it. Although he had not seen Zhu Bing's true power, but from just a few words, he could understand Zhu Bing's power. If it was worshipped by tens of thousands of people, he couldn't just put the saber out there and let people worship it every day. There must be something he did not know. Therefore, Qin Shujian came this time to find out how to make a Dao weapon have Zhu Bing's power. So Sect Master wants to know about this. The heaven and earth bow moved slightly and continued. This method is actually very simple. Sect Master, you just need to let people build a stone statue according to the appearance of a Dao weapon. Then, you can let the Dao weapon's aura be connected to it. As long as people worship the Dao weapon stone statue, this power will be directly transmitted to the Dao weapon itself. After a long time, it may have a trace of Zhu Bing's power. This power seems to have a name. I have to think about it. Isn't this power called faith? That's right. It's the power of faith. Sect Master is really knowledgeable. You actually know about the existence of faith. The heaven and earth bow flattered him again. Qin Shujian was expressionless. Ever since the other party mentioned Zhu Bing for the first time, he vaguely felt that this method was somewhat familiar. Now, after listening to the other party's detailed explanation, it was only then that he truly remembered. Wasn't this the faith of his previous life? The difference was that the faith of his previous life was worshipping gods. Now, the faith of his current life was worshipping a Dao weapon. It was just about the so-called faith. Actually, Qin Shujian didn't know much about it. The only thing he knew about these two words was that he had heard about it from someone else. Then, he asked about the key points of building a stone statue, as well as the things to pay attention to. Qin Shujian began to prepare for this matter again. Thousand Mountain blood was already a part of his strength. If he could become stronger, it would be of great benefit to him, or to the entire Yuan sect. Chapter 190. Whoosh! A gentle breeze swept across the sky like chaotic blades. A cultivator at the second level of the true martial realm, who could not dodge in time, was killed on the spot. The 13th one. Peng Qing read his mission silently as he sheathed his saber. Legacy mission. Killing 1 is a crime. Killing 10,000 is a hero. Killing 9 million is a hero. Mission requirement. Kill a certain number of true martial realm cultivators. Current mission completion rate. 131,0000. Mission time limit. 3 years. Mission reward. Complete legacy. Mission failure. Lose the legacy. As for the mission requirements, Peng Qing did not feel much about it. After all, this was a game world. No matter how many people he killed, they were just NPCs. In his eyes, this was just a set of cold data. What Peng Qing really cared about was 10,000 true martial realm cultivators. This was not a small number. In half a month, he had only killed 13 of them by using the Wild Wind Chaotic Blade / and the low-grade spirit weapon, the Weeping Blood Blade, which Dao Nu had given him. Meanwhile, just as Peng Qing was collecting his spoils of war, Dao Nu's voice was heard from the ring. There are limited true martial realm cultivators in the True Dominion. If you want to complete the mission, it would be best to head to the Spirit Dominion. Given my current strength, wouldn't it be too risky to head to the Spirit Dominion? Although you are at the first level of the true martial realm, you have the Weeping Blood Blade, which belonged to the previous owner. This is a weapon that can kill even more people. As long as it kills enough people, it will transform and become stronger. Given your current strength and the Weeping Blood Blade, ordinary inner energy realm cultivators are no match for you. If you head to the Spirit Dominion, you can run away even if you can't defeat them, as long as you do not deliberately provoke spirit martial realm cultivators. You don't need me to teach you this principle, do you? The Spirit Dominion? Peng Qing repeated. Dao Nu's old voice added, the true martial realm cultivators in the True Dominion are the peak. If too many true martial realm cultivators are lost, everyone will be on guard. Although there are not many experts in the True Dominion, the sects have a strong foundation. If they use these methods, it will be very difficult to contend with them. On the contrary, although the true martial realm and the spirit domain were experts, they were not the top. It was normal for some true martial realm experts to fall in battle. If you want to complete the mission and obtain the supreme inheritance, you must have courage that ordinary people don't have. Dao Nu's words. His words scattered Peng Qing's hesitation. Indeed, although he was at the first level of the martial realm, his comprehensive strength had already surpassed this level. In addition, he had killed 13 cultivators of the true martial realm, so he had almost reached the peak of the first level of the true martial realm. It would not be long before he could break into the second level of the true martial realm. Thinking about it this way, spirit realm wasn't out of the question. What's going on? Another elder is missing. Zhang Jie's face was cold as he looked at the crowd below. He felt a surge of anger in his chest that was about to explode at any moment. One of them braced himself and replied, "When we rushed over, there was only a mess left on the spot. I'm afraid that Elder Liu has already met his end." Sect Master, in just 3 days, 3 of our elders have gone missing, and one of them has been confirmed dead. I'm afraid the same is true for the other 2. Could it be that the other sects are secretly targeting us? Investigate. Focus on those 3 sects and see who is most likely to do it. Zhang Jie suppressed his anger and said coldly. His sect only had a dozen or so true martial realm martial artists. Now they had lost 3 martial realm cultivators. The loss was not small at all. In Zhang Jie's mind, the culprit must be an enemy of the sect. As for whether it was the mutants who did it, he had never considered this question at all. Even if the mutants had the strength to do it, the sect had not been destroyed. Those who had died in the hands of the mutants could be resurrected, even if there was a 3-day buffer period. However, it had already been 3 days since the first elder had fallen. No resurrection. That meant the culprit was not the mutants. Some judgments were so simple, but in Zhang Jie's eyes, they were ironclad facts. He just wanted to know now. Which sect was it that wanted to make a move on him? Zhang Jie had already felt as if a layer of black fog had enveloped him. In the dark, there seemed to be scarlet eyes coldly staring at him, ready to pounce on him and give him a fatal blow at any time. At the same time, the other sects in the True Dominion were also secretly investigating. This was because they had lost a few martial realm cultivators during this period. In the study room, which was as bright as day, Marquis Baiyun was holding a book and studying it carefully. The spirit incense on the table lit up, its fragrance filling the entire room. Tuk tuk. Marquis, I have something to discuss with you. Come in, Marquis Baiyun said faintly. However, his gaze was still fixed on the book in his hand. Iya. A slight sound was heard, and the door was pushed open. The person who came in was a tall man in casual clothes. When he saw Marquis Baiyun, he immediately lowered his head and cupped his fists. Greetings, Marquis. Tell me what happened. We have found the remnants of Marquis Feng. Huh. Marquis Baiyun's hand, which was holding the book, paused. His gaze finally landed on that person as he asked, "Where is he?" "He is outside. He said he wants to see you, Marquis. Is there anyone else besides him?" "I did not see him. Ask him to come to the side hall to see me." Marquis Baiyun put down the book in his hand, stood up, and walked out of the study room. That person followed behind Marquis Baiyun. When he left the study room, he turned around and respectfully closed the door again. In the side hall, Marquis Baiyun sat on the main seat. Below him stood a middle-aged man in shabby clothes who smelled of dust and carried a bag on his back. "Greetings, Marquis Baiyun." After saying that, the middle-aged man knelt down directly. Marquis Baiyun's expression was gentle as he said with a chuckle, "I am very curious. Why did the remnants of Marquis Feng choose to walk into a trap? I was originally from the Great Zhao Kingdom. However, I was bewitched by Marquis Feng and had no choice but to embark on this path of no return. Now that I have come to realize my mistake, I have specially come to ask for your forgiveness. Aren't you afraid that I will kill you?" Cheng Zhong's body trembled slightly, but he still replied firmly, "I am afraid. However, since I have done something wrong, I only have myself to blame even if I lose my character. I just hope that Marquis Baiyun can see that I am willing to admit my mistake and be lenient." Marquis Baiyun picked up the teacup beside him and gently touched the teacup with the lid. He said, "A prodigal who has turned over a new leaf is more precious than gold. This is certainly a good thing. However, I heard that the remnants of Marquis Feng are by your side. Where is he now?" "Marquis Baiyun, please take a look." Cheng Zhong untied the bag on his back and raised it high above his head with both hands. Seeing this, the guard at the side stepped forward and took the bag. Then, He opened the bag and revealed a black box. Then, the guard took the box and walked to Marquis Bayun's side. He handed it forward and said respectfully, "Marquis Bayun, please take a look. Open it." "Yes." Hearing this, the guard immediately opened the box. Suddenly, a foul smell came from the box. Marquis Bayun glanced at the box and his eyes seemed to fluctuate. Then, he waved his hand and signaled the guard to leave with the box. Then, he stood up from the main seat and came to Cheng Zhong. He shook his head and said with a smile, "You did a good job. A wise man submits to circumstances." Cheng Zhong still did not dare to raise his head. He replied fawningly, "Marquis Yifeng was wrong. The son has to pay his father's debt. The existence of Marquis Yifeng's son is naturally a mistake. I'm just putting righteousness before family. Everything is for the sake of the imperial court." What a good way to put righteousness before family. Marquis Bayun nodded, and the smile on his face became even brighter. However, the words that came out of his mouth made Cheng Zhong's smile freeze on his face. "Men, drag him away and feed him to the dogs." "Yes." The guards on both sides stepped forward and directly lifted Cheng Zhong up and dragged him outside. Cheng Zhong immediately panicked. He struggled desperately and shouted, "Marquis Bayun, I've already made up for my mistakes. Please spare my life." "Marquis Bayun, didn't you say that you brought this upon yourself?" "Marquis Bayun, I was wrong. Please spare my life. I'm willing to be at your beck and call. I won't have the slightest disloyalty." Cheng Zhong shouted crazily. He wanted to use his quintessential essence to break free. However, the two guards' actions were like pliers that firmly locked him in place. There was even a power that far exceeded the real martial arts realm that imprisoned his quintessential essence. Then, Cheng Zhong shouted as he was dragged away. Marquis Bayun's gentle face gradually turned cold. He looked at the door that had disappeared and muttered to himself, "Wang Yin, I'm afraid you didn't expect that your last son would be cut off in this way." He seemed to have seen Marquis Yifeng's high-spirited appearance. Marquis Bayun could not help but feel a little emotional when he compared the current situation with his entire family being killed and the last bloodline being cut off. Not long after, a guard came to report, "Marquis, he has been dealt with. Very good. Bury the remains of Marquis Yifeng's son as well." "Yes." After the guard left, just as Marquis Bayun was about to leave, someone came to see him. "Marquis, there is a letter regarding the true dominion of Mount Liang. Present it." "Marquis, please take a look." That person respectfully handed over a letter with both hands. Marquis Bayun returned to his seat and sat down. Then, he stretched out his hand to take the letter and spread it open. About 10 breaths of time later, Marquis Bayun put down the letter, looked at the person in front of him, and said, "Take my token and go to the Ministry of Revenue. Ask them to write an official document saying that I have agreed to build a city for the Yuan sect." "Yes, Marquis Bayun." After the guard left, Marquis Bayun did not do anything, but the letter quietly turned into powder and disappeared. Build a city? It seems that the Origin sect is developing faster than I thought. He had been keeping an eye on Yuan Zhong's recent actions. After all, Bayun Mansion was under his jurisdiction. Nothing could escape his eyes and ears. When he found out that the Origin sect had more than 1,000 internal energy cultivators, Marquis Bayun basically understood that the Origin sect should have been promoted to a 4th-level force. The destruction of the 7 sects had caused quite a commotion. However, the Origin sect had a good reason to do so. Therefore, after this incident caused some commotion, it did not continue to spread. Instead, it slowly calmed down. Marquis Bayun had originally planned to warn Qin Shujian if the Origin sect destroyed the 7 sects and wantonly attacked the other True Dominion sects with the strength of the sect. However, after the destruction of the 7 sects, things had calmed down. Regarding this, Marquis Bayun once again thought highly of Qin Shujian. He had potential. He could only advance and retreat. Such a person was a rare talent no matter where he was. Just as the official document was being approved, the Origin sect was already preparing to build a city. Large amounts of silver had been spent. Then, large amounts of materials had been purchased from the carrier business. The large amount of transactions had made Gu Feng smile from ear to ear during this period. As the steward of the branch, if the transactions and profits of the branch that he was in charge of were high enough, he would be able to obtain many benefits. Now that the Origin sect was building a city, the amount of silver needed to be spent was in the millions. A transaction of such a large amount could not be ignored no matter where it was. Needless to say, there were not many rich people in the Liang Mountain True Dominion. As a result, the transactions of the branch each month ranged from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands. It was hard for Gu Feng not to be excited now that he had suddenly received a large order worth millions. Furthermore, given his relationship with the Origin sect, the more powerful the Origin sect was, the more benefits he would be able to obtain. Therefore, Gu Feng had put in a lot of effort this time to help the Origin sect prepare enough materials to build a city. Meanwhile, Qin Shujian had asked someone to collect a few large pieces of her materials. Then, he carved and cast them bit by bit according to the appearance of the Thousand Mountain Blood. That's right. He was following the instructions of the Cosmic Bow and building a Tao artifact stone statue. However, this matter, Qin Shujian did not ask someone else to do it. Instead, he completed it himself. On the peak of the Liang Mountain, there was a total of 7 pieces of black, or that were about 20 feet tall. Qin Shujian was holding the Thousand Mountain Blood in his hand. He was relying on the appearance of this Tao artifact to carve the ore bit by bit. The easiest way to connect the Tao artifact's aura with the stone statue was to use the Tao artifact to carve the stone statue out personally. Although the ore in front of him was very hard, it was still like paper in front of the Tao artifact. A lot of it was easily shaved off. When the Cosmic Bow saw this, it was very envious. It was the dream of any spiritual object to be worshipped by living beings. If the Tao artifact could use this opportunity to obtain a trace of Zhu Bing's power, other spiritual objects could do the same. The reason why it had a higher spirituality than other spiritual objects was because the Coiling Stone sect worshipped it day and night. Unfortunately, there were too few people in the Coiling Stone sect. Even after hundreds of years of worship, its spirituality had increased, and it was still a middle-grade spirit artifact. It was not even qualified to become a superior-grade spirit artifact. The Cosmic Bow also wanted the people of the Origin sect to worship it, but it knew very well that this was not realistic. Other sects treated their spirit artifacts as treasures, but the Origin sect had a Tao artifact. If it dared to make this request, the Cosmic Bow even suspected that it would be destroyed by Qin Shujian in an instant. Chapter 191. Kill. Kill. An uncountable number of soldiers surrounded a city. Stones rolled down from the city walls and arrows rained down, killing those who attempted to climb up the city walls. The arrows pierced through the air. There were blue dots on the arrowheads. When the arrows touched the protective chi of physical invulnerability realm cultivators, they tore it apart and pierced through the cultivators. Gang-shattering arrows. They were specially prepared by the Imperial Court to deal with cultivators above the martial arts realm. In front of such weapons, even a cultivator in the spiritual martial realm could die if he was hit by a large number of gang-shattering arrows. Block them all. Don't let any of them come up. It won't be long before the Imperial Court sends reinforcements. The opportunity to make a name for yourself is right before your eyes. As long as you block them, I won't forget your contributions. Chuizhen shouted angrily. His palm shook the clouds and knocked down several cultivators who were flying in the air. Then, he sent out a rain of arrows and killed them in the air. Flying in the air. They were at least in the spiritual martial realm. After killing 4 cultivators in the spiritual martial realm with one palm, the soldiers' morale was boosted. However, Chuizhen was not happy at all. He turned around and went down the city walls. When he came to the inner city, he looked at the people who were still busy on the altar. He asked one of them, "How's the portal? Can it still be used?" "Not yet. Marquis Qianshan must have set up a huge heaven and earth lock formation to lock up the surrounding space. Now, we can't enter or exit the portal." Heaven and earth lock formation. Chuizhen's face was gloomy. When did Marquis Qianshan set up the heaven and earth lock formation? He did not notice it at all. Now, the portal could not be used. Outside, there were millions of soldiers surrounding the city. At this moment, Shushan City was no different from a dangerous place. As for the reinforcements he mentioned earlier, it was just to boost the soldiers' morale. The imperial court did not have time to react to Marquis Qianshan's sudden attack. Even if Shushan City was destroyed, the imperial court would not know in time, let alone now. At this moment, Shushan City was in chaos. The originally quiet and peaceful scene also disappeared without a trace due to the army attacking the city. However, amidst the chaos, there was a group of people who were extremely excited. Zhang Wenquan was a little excited. He never thought that he would be able to participate in such a huge war. Such a large-scale war was definitely unprecedented for players. He looked at the mission he had received. Then, he looked at the chaotic situation around him. Zhang Wenquan followed the map and walked towards a certain direction in the city. City Lord, bad news? Don't panic. What happened? Some of the mutants in the city are slaughtering everywhere, causing chaos. Right now, all of our forces are fighting against Marquis Qianshan's army. We don't have any extra forces to suppress the mutants. Mutants. The corners of Cui Zhan's eyes twitched, and his face was filled with cold killing intent. In his opinion, those who were still causing trouble at this time were basically traitors who were in cahoots with Marquis Qianshan. Then, he suppressed the anger in his heart and said coldly, "Are all the players in the city rebelling? There's still a portion that hasn't made much of a move yet. Issue a mission for the rest of the mutants to stabilize the chaos in the city. Kill anyone who tries to create chaos. Martial arts, divine weapons, and sharp weapons. Shushan City can afford them all." Chuizhen immediately made a decision. Mutants wouldn't do anything without benefits. However, as long as there were enough benefits, they would definitely be crazier than others. Right now, all of Shushan City's forces were fighting against Marquis Qianshan's attack. The only ones who could deal with the mutants in the city were the other mutants. Then, the City Lord Manor directly issued a mission. All the players who received the mission were shocked when they saw the mission reward. Then, they were filled with joy. Faction Confrontation Mission. The bountiful rewards for the quest. Zhang Wenquan was currently in Shushan City. There were many things in his bag, which he had obtained from robbing shops. After all, he had to create chaos. He just had to kill people in the city. Robbing shops could give him items and also create chaos. Obtaining loot and completing the mission didn't conflict with each other. After this mission, I can at least level up. It's enough to buy a true rank cultivation technique or martial art. Zhang Wenquan smiled. Then, his gaze landed on a shop in front of him. However, before he took a step forward, he suddenly felt a warning in his heart. At the same time, dense air-piercing sounds came from behind him. Zhang Wenquan didn't even think and did a standard roll. Then, he saw an arrow hit the ground behind him. After he got up, suddenly, he saw 4 players rushing towards him from behind. 2 of the players were wielding longbows. It was obvious that the arrows he had just fired had been fired by them. Damn, what's going on? Zhang Wenquan was stunned. The players didn't do the mission but shot him with arrows. Were they trying to take advantage of him? He retreated and shouted, "Brothers, we didn't have any grievances in the past. Why do you have to ruin our relationship? There are so many shops around. I'll give them all to you. You just have to give us your head." Jiang Qing's pretty face was cold. She rushed toward Zhang Wenquan with wind under her feet. The long sword in her hand shone with a cold light. The sword aura pierced through the air and slashed toward Jiang Wenquan's back. Damn! Zhang Wenquan cursed in his heart. He pulled out the long sword from his waist and slashed back. When he shattered the sword aura, he didn't stop running. After the exchange just now, he already knew that this female player wasn't any weaker than him. The other 3 players were probably about the same. They might be able to deal with Zhang Wenquan alone. However, they had to deal with 4 at the same time. He thought about it and decided that running away was more practical. Swoosh, swoosh. At this moment, an arrow pierced through the air behind him. Zhang Wenquan had to stop temporarily. He swung his sword to block the arrow and then fled again. After a while, his speed slowed down. Not long after, Zhang Wenquan looked at the 4 players who surrounded him. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He spread his hands and said, "We're all players. Why do you have to force me? At most, I'll give it to you. You won't get any benefits from killing me. You underestimate yourself too much." Jiang Qing smiled. She waved her hand, and the few of them charged toward Jiang Wenquan. After a battle, soon, Jiang Wenquan was pierced by a sword. He turned into white light and disappeared with a face full of unwillingness. When he died, a long sword and a lot of silver fell to the ground. "Let's go. We'll continue to look for the next target." Jiang Qing looked at the completion rate of the mission, collected the loot dropped by the other party, and then left. Similar scenes like this. At this moment, it was happening everywhere in Shushan City. A portion of the players received the mission from Marquis Qianshan. The mission was to create chaos in Shushan City and receive the corresponding reward. Another portion of the players received the mission from Chuizhan. The mission was to kill all the people who created chaos, including the players, to maintain peace in the city. The two missions were completely conflicting. In addition, this was Shushan City's home ground. The players who received the mission from Shushan City could see which faction the other players belonged to. This way, the players on Marquis Qianshan's side were at a disadvantage. For a moment, a large number of players in the city were surrounded and killed. However, there were still some players who saw that something was wrong. They quietly avoided the danger and went into hiding. In a manner, a player had just jumped over the wall. However, the moment he entered, he was surrounded by several players. Ji Yuan looked at him and shouted, "What mission did you receive? What is the mission about?" The sudden question came out of nowhere. He was surrounded for no reason. Li Shaoxing was shocked at first. However, after looking at the surroundings and Ji Yuan and the others, he calmed down a little. He replied tentatively, "I received the mission from Marquis Qianshan. The mission is to create chaos in the city. The requirement is to make 70% of Shushan City panic. We're on the same side." Ji Yuan also let out a sigh of relief. Then, the cold expressions of the other players also relaxed. Li Shaoxing wiped the sweat from his forehead and asked, "Brother, what are you doing? Didn't you notice?" Ji Yuan looked at him strangely and said, "Shushan City obviously gave the players a faction mission. Moreover, these players seem to be able to see which faction they belong to. Until now, many of our players have died in their hands. If we aren't careful, this faction mission will be hard to complete." Just as Li Shaoxing said, Marquis Qianshan's mission was to make 70% of Shushan City panic. This was a group mission. Every time a player successfully created chaos, the mission completion rate would increase. Originally, the mission completion rate had increased to 50%. However, as the players from Shushan City intervened, the panic was suppressed. This caused their character completion rate to drop to less than 30%. Are you planning to join forces with the other factions to deal with the players from Shushan City? Li Shaoxing saw through Ji Yuan's intentions. Ji Yuan didn't deny it and nodded. The players from Shushan City are working together. Our side is fighting alone. This is a weakness. Moreover, we can't see which faction we belong to. This is another disadvantage. If we want to complete the mission, we have to work together. Otherwise, we will be defeated one by one." Hearing this, Li Shaoxing agreed with this. After some discussion, they decided to add a new member to the team. Not long after, the team walked out of the manor and looked for players from the same faction. They strengthened the team while fighting against the players from Shushan City and creating chaos. Chapter 192. At this moment, the battle on the city wall was still ongoing. Marquis Qianshan's army desperately tried to rush up the city wall. Many experts bombarded the city wall, trying to push it down. On the blood-stained city wall, obscure runes appeared one after another. These runes combined together and protected all the city walls. No matter how the experts bombarded them, it was difficult for them to damage the city walls. At the same time, there was a dense rain of arrows and huge rocks falling down, bombarding the army below. Chuizhan stood on the city wall with a huge longbow in his hand. His cold eyes glanced at the attacking army below. From time to time, he would shoot an arrow and take the life of an expert. For a moment, there were more than a dozen spiritual martial realm experts who had died in his hands. The army charged. The basic martial realm experts were just pawns. The genuine martial realm experts were the backbone of the army. The spiritual martial realm experts were considered high-end forces. Compared to the basic martial realm and the genuine martial realm experts, killing the spiritual martial realm cultivators was more effective. When Chuizhen knocked an arrow on his bow and shot it out again, he was stunned. A stream of light came from afar and suddenly collided with the arrow. Boom! There was an explosion in the air, and the arrow turned into iron shavings. Chuizhen looked at the back of the attacking army. There was a general in light golden armor who slowly put down the longbow in his hand. With his cultivation, he could see the general's face clearly even from afar. Yang Mingxuan. He was one of the generals on Marquis Qinshan's side and the general of this attack. After blocking the attack of the long arrow, Yi Zichen was stunned. Yang Mingxuan also looked at Chuizhen on the city wall and shouted, "Chuizhen, your mountain-protecting city has been surrounded. It is useless to resist any further. If you surrender now, not only will you be safe, but you can also be the lord of Mountain Guard City." His voice, it suppressed the fierce battle cries on the battlefield and was heard by everyone on the city wall. Chuizhen sneered and replied, "Rebels, how dare you speak so arrogantly? When the Imperial Army arrives, the rebels led by Marquis Qinshan will all die." After saying that, he shouted again in a clear voice, "Among the 13 prefectures of Great Zhao, Thousand Mountains Prefecture is but a small part of it. Marquis Qinshan dared to rebel, but he's just digging his own grave. When the Imperial Court's army arrives, anyone who rebels will be executed along with their entire family. It's not too late for all of you to repent and atone for your sins." His voice was like thunder. It was directly transmitted to the ears of all the soldiers on Marquis Qinshan's side. Immediately, the attack of the army seemed to have slowed down for a moment. Yang Mingxuan's eyes turned cold when he saw this. He hollered, "Since you want to do this the hard way, then don't blame me for not giving you face. Marquis has laid out the heaven-sealing-earth locking formation within 1,000 miles of the city. Under the heaven-sealing-earth lock formation, all living things can't move forward or backward. You can't activate the teleportation gate in Mountain Guard City, right? If you can't open the portal, your city is destined to be isolated. How are you going to defend against my army of 1,000,000? With only 200,000 soldiers?" Yang Mingxuan's words. Many of the Mountain Guard City soldiers' expressions changed. Chuizhen's expression turned solemn as he hollered, "Don't listen to his nonsense. How can the heaven-sealing, earth-locking formation be set up so easily? Now that the teleportation gate is open, the Imperial Court is sending troops over. Whoever bravely killed the enemy would be rewarded handsomely. However, if anyone backs out and disturbs the morale of the army, they will be wiped out." His words were vicious. It directly dispelled the bad thoughts that rose in the hearts of the soldiers on the city wall. In their eyes, as long as the teleportation gate was opened and the Imperial Court's reinforcements arrived, then even if the army attacked, it wouldn't be a problem. Now that Chuizhen said that the teleportation gate was open then, it couldn't be fake. The war continued. Yang Mingxuan's expression wasn't any better towards the stubborn resistance of Mountain Guard City. The deputy general asked, "General, Mountain Guard City is resisting fiercely. Should we retreat? Anyways, we have laid out the heaven-sealing-earth locking formation. We can't enter or leave Mountain Guard City. With the food reserves in the city, how many days can we last? Plus, if the army doesn't arrive in a few days, the people of Mountain Guard City will scatter. When the time comes, we will be able to take them down without much effort. Pass down my orders. Everyone attack Mountain Guard City day and night. Don't damage the city walls too much. Let the players in the city spread the news that the teleportation gate can't be opened." Yang Mingxuan waved his hand and interrupted the other party's suggestion. If they had enough time, then it would be better to surround Mountain Guard City and wait for it to collapse. But now, they had to fight for every second they had. If not, when the Imperial Court reacted, they would be attacked from both sides. If they weren't careful, they would be in danger of being wiped out. Hong! Yang Mingxuan suddenly leaped into the air, and a long halberd appeared in his hand. A terrifying Zhen Yuan burst out from his body and bombarded the city. The moment he attacked, it was an earth-shattering power. Chuizhen's expression turned serious. He stepped into the air and formed a shield with his palms. He raised his hands and true essence surged like a tidal wave, colliding with the long halberd. Hong long long. The two collided, and a terrifying true essence wind spread out. When Chuizhen retreated, a long bow appeared in his hand. When he pulled the bowstring, the bow sucked in a huge amount of heaven and earth spiritual chi and condensed it into a long arrow. A Dao seal appeared on the bow, and instantly, its power increased. A Dao artifact. This was Mountain Guard City's last trump card. It was also Chuizhen's trump card against Marquis Qianshan. The long halberd shattered the sky and collided with the Dao artifact. Yang Mingxuan's body shook. Then, a jade appeared in his hand. He crushed it and bowed. Marquis, please help me kill the enemy. Decree. Chuizhen's body shook. He looked at the jade, and a terrifying fluctuation spread out. A huge hand seemed to be born from the void and pushed toward him like a mountain. This palm. It made his blood boil as if he was facing a terrifying existence. There was no time to think. Chuizhen pulled the bowstring of the longbow to the limit. The next moment, the bowstring was released. Then, the sky was filled with spirit chi arrows, which seemed to cover the clouds and cover the sun, and fiercely collided with the big hand. This move made his true essence evaporate by more than half. Then, the moment the huge hand shattered, a long halberd pierced through the chaotic fluctuation. Chuizhen had just put up his protective chi when it shattered. He fell toward the city wall. Landing on the top of the city wall, Chuizhen's face was flushed red. His throat rolled as if there was blood that wanted to gush out, but he forced it back down. There was a big cut on his left shoulder, and half of his clothes were soaked in blood. My lord. When the people of Shushan City saw this, their expressions changed drastically. Chuizhen waved his hand. His expression was calm as he said, "It's just some superficial wounds. I didn't expect Yang Mingxuan to ask for Marquis Qianshan's decree. Now that I have a Dao artifact, what can the decree do? Mountain Guard City can't be broken. Mountain Guard City can't be broken." This calmed the hearts of the people. On the other side, after injuring Chuizhen, Yang Mingxuan didn't chase after him. Instead, he returned to the back of the camp. The people on the side were all flattering him. "General, you are invincible. How can Chuizhen be your opponent? Now that Chuizhen is injured, should we directly charge over and kill him in one go?" Yang Mingxuan shook his head and said, "No rush. Let the army continue to attack. Also, summon all the players to Mountain Guard City to assist the army. If we can take down the city, everyone will be rewarded." "Yes, my lord." Following Yang Mingxuan's order, the players recorded the battle and uploaded it to the forum. This caused a huge commotion. It wasn't as if such a large-scale war had never happened before. However, most of them were NPCs. There weren't many players who could participate. However, this was the first time that they had encountered a large-scale faction quest that involved tens of thousands of players and allowed them to attack a city together. Millions of players were killing each other. Just by watching the video, it was enough to make people feel a strong impact. Especially the bloody battlefield that was like a meat grinder. It caused many people's hearts to tremble. However, this incident only affected Thousand Mountains Prefecture. As for the players from other prefectures, although they wanted to participate, the distance made them give up. At this moment, in Mountain Guard City, the battle between the players from both camps had reached its climax. The players from Suga City were able to see through the enemy's factions and had the opportunity to strike first. They did indeed have a lot of advantages at the start. However, as time passed, the players from Marquis Qianshan's side started to group up and no longer acted alone. As a result, Mountain Guard City's advantage was nullified. Next, when the two sides started to fight again, it was a direct confrontation. "This won't do. We have to split up. If we continue to be followed by them, we won't have the chance to complete the mission." Ji Yuan looked at the mission completion rate, and his face turned ugly. It was true that they had gathered their forces. However, because of this, they had become a bigger target. The players from Mountain Guard City kept following them and didn't give them a chance to create chaos. "What do you plan to do?" "I suggest we split up. One group will try to enter the inner city, while the other group will hold back the players from Mountain Guard City. Ji Yuan could roughly understand the meaning of the conversation between the experts from both sides. The teleportation gate in the inner city was the key. If they successfully entered the inner city, they might really cause chaos. At that time, completing the mission wouldn't be a problem. Chapter 193. The Imperial Court's approval came very quickly. Originally, Zhang Baiqing had said that it would take 7 days to half a month. Now, it fell into Qin Shujian's hands in just 5 days. He looked at the approval in his hand and the seal on it. He understood. This was probably the work of Marquis Baiyun. As for Marquis Baiyun, Qin Shujian didn't think too much about it. He had given him a lot of benefits. It was also because of his potential that he had made an investment to rope him in. Seriously speaking, now, he was just a real martial arts realm cultivator. For someone like Marquis Baiyun, a real martial arts realm cultivator wouldn't be of much use no matter how strong he was. Unless one day, he could break through to the spiritual martial arts realm or even the divine martial arts realm. Perhaps Marquis Baiyun would really value him. However, this was all for later. Since Marquis Baiyun was willing to help, Qin Shujian had no reason to refuse. After all, the Liangshan True Dominion was within the Baiyun mansion. If Yuan's sect wanted to develop steadily, he couldn't offend the Imperial Court. If he had a good relationship with Marquis Baiyun, it would be good for Yuan's sect's future. After the approval came down, Qin Shujian directly ordered to start the first step of building the city. Before the approval came down, Yuan's sect had already prepared most of the things needed to build the city. Now that the approval came down, they could start the construction right away. The more than 4,000 odd job disciples who had been captured from the 7 sects immediately threw themselves into the bustling construction of the city after they had just finished building the branch. For this, but no one dared to utter a single word of complaint, because those who had complaints had all been arranged clearly. Anyway, they could surrender. They were basically people who were greedy for life and afraid of death. It was good enough that they could survive. It was just a little hard. That was nothing. Moreover, Qin Shujian didn't completely give them hope. As long as these people gathered 500 contribution points, they could get rid of their status as odd jobs, become outer sect disciples of Yuan's sect, or leave directly. Of course, odd jobs disciples didn't have identity tokens. Qin Shujian directly handed the matter of registering contribution points to Lin Daozhen. This person used to be a disciple of the Coiling Stone sect. However, after joining the Yuan sect, his loyalty had exceeded 90%. Hence, the Yuan sect valued such a loyal disciple. Therefore, although Lin Daozhen was a janitor disciple on the surface, he was in charge of all the janitor disciples. In terms of status, he was not much worse than an inner disciple. This was a privilege granted to him by Qin Shujian. Hurry up, don't be careless. Lin Daozhen, who seemed to have transformed into a supervisor, looked at the handymen who were working in full swing and shouted from time to time. At the side, there were also odd job workers who served them tea and moistened their throats. To tell the truth, Lin Daozhen was very satisfied with his current life. Previously, when the Coiling Stone sect recruited disciples to fight against the Devil Calamity, all of his fellow disciples had died at the hands of the Devil Calamity. He no longer had any feelings for the Coiling Stone sect. The only thought in his mind was to return alive and destroy the Coiling Stone sect to avenge the deaths of his brothers and sisters, as well as to avenge himself. It was this obsession that had supported him to survive the Devil Calamity all this time. It was only when Marquis Baiyun killed the evil spirit that he finally managed to survive. After leaving the Devil Calamity, only then did Lin Daozhen know that the sect master of Yuan's sect, Qin Shujian, had killed 2 demons and forced the last one to devour all of the demon disaster. Until now, he only knew that it was all thanks to the sect master of Yuan's sect that he was able to survive. It was as if someone had given him a mouthful of water to drink when he was about to die of thirst in the desert. That feeling, it made Lin Daozhen feel that his life was given to him by the other party. Therefore, this was also why, when Qin Shujian attacked the Coiling Stone sect, he immediately surrendered, and his loyalty was so high that it was almost to the point of full loyalty. Regarding this matter, other than Lin Daozhen himself who knew the reason, No one else, including Qin Shujian, knew. He had no intention of spreading this news around. On the peak of Mount Liang, the 7 tall stone statues had already been completed. After spending several days of effort, Qin Shujian could be said to be sculpting slowly. It was as if he was sculpting a piece of art, and his mind was not relaxed at all. In his hands, the mountain blood did not seem to be a Tao artifact, but more like an ordinary tool. Just like that, when the stone statues were completed, Qin Shujian felt a little tired. However, when he looked at the mountain blood that seemed to be expanding, a smile appeared on his face. 666. Sect Master's methods are really ingenious. This is the first time I've seen such a stone statue. The bow of heaven and earth was already flattering him. When Qin Shujian was sculpting the stone statues, the bow of heaven and earth did not dare to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Instead, it just watched silently from the side. At this moment, seeing that the other party had finished, the bow of heaven and earth naturally would not let go of any opportunity to flatter him, as long as it knew how to kneel down and lick the strong. Even if it was only a middle-grade spirit artifact, it could still live better than a high-grade spirit artifact. Haha. Qin Shujian was also in a good mood. Looking at the stone statues in front of him, he could feel a kind of faintly discernible aura from them. That was the aura that belonged to the Tao artifact Mountain Blood. Sculpting out of nothing, the Mountain Blood was already connected with the aura of the stone statues in front of him. Subsequently, Qin Shujian directly stood up. His true essence turned into energy and directly lifted the 7 stone statues. Then, he walked as if he was flying and directly went to the training field. Rumble. The 7 stone statues landed on the ground, causing the ground to shake slightly. When the passers-by saw this scene, they all stopped in their tracks and then looked at the 7 tall stone statues in shock. They had seen many stone statues of people. However, it was really the first time they saw a stone statue of a saber. Instead of calling it a stone statue, it was more like a huge stone saber. Then, a huge saber stand was carved out of black stone, and then the saber was supported. Qin Shujian did not care too much and directly summoned the other elders in the inherited martial hall, as well as the elders of the various branches. Soon, all the elders were present. There are a total of 7 stone statues in the training field. 1 will be placed in the origin sect, 1 for the other branches, and the last one will be placed in the town in the future. All the disciples of our sect will have to worship the stone statues every day. Do not slack off, Qin Shujian said in a deep voice. The other elders looked at each other and did not understand what the other party's purpose was. However, since the sect master had said so, they could not say much. It was just placing 1 more stone statue and worshiping it every day. This was not a big problem. Soon, Song Hong and the others nodded and said, "We understand." Very good. Qin Shujian nodded in satisfaction. Then, the elders came to the stone statues and used their energy to carry them away. As for the stone statues placed in the town, Niu Feng directly carried them away. Although the town had not been built yet, there were still more than 4,000 servants there. In Qin Shujian's view, they could all contribute and should not be left to waste. After doing these things, Qin Shujian issued a new mission to all the players. Worship the stone statues? After all the players received the mission notification, they were stunned at first, but then they were slightly delighted. Worshipping the stone statues for a total of 30 times would give a small amount of life force and 1 contribution point. No matter how many times they worshipped each day, it would only count as 1 visit. This reward did not seem like much, but after many years, it was still quite a lot. Most importantly, the mission would not fail. As long as it was not completed, it would always be there. The most important thing was, the mission content was not complicated, and there was no need to kill monsters or anything. To put it bluntly, this was no different from giving away contribution points for free. For this kind of thing, no player would refuse. After issuing the mission to the players, Qin Shujian originally wanted to go to the mission hall and directly post this mission for everyone to receive. But then he thought about it. This matter should be dropped. After all, NPCs receiving missions was not supervised by the system. In addition, there was no basis to worship the stone statues. It was difficult to judge whether the mission was completed or not. On the contrary, issuing missions to the players through the system would consume life force. But the system would judge whether the mission was completed or not. He did not need to care about it. Although each mission required a certain amount of life force, to be honest, a few thousand life force was not in Qin Shujian's eyes. Basically, the people of Yuan's sect, they contributed the same amount of life force to him every day. The only cumbersome thing, about every 30 days, this mission would have to be repeated. After all, he did not rule out the possibility that some players would work so hard to complete the mission for a little bit of contribution points and experience points. And the mission issued through the system could not be repeated. In other words, players who had previously accepted the same quest could not accept the same quest again until they had completed it. Qin Shujian only needed to issue the mission to those players who completed the mission after 30 days. In this way, it was equivalent to avoiding wasting extra life force. After doing these things, Yuan's sect had basically calmed down again. The only thing that was busy was the construction of the city. Building a city was not something that could be completed in a day. According to Qin Shujian's estimation, with the current manpower, it would take at least 1 to 2 months to complete it. This was the most reasonable estimation, or else it might take even longer. Bang! The terrifying spirit energy of heaven and earth was in chaos. Qin Shujian directly upgraded the Roaring Flame technique to the 10th level of the true martial arts. The Yang fire directly transformed to the 10th level. A gush of strong Yang aura was already surging in his body. After about 10 days, the people of Yuan's sect provided him with a lot of life force. As the third cultivation technique was upgraded to the 10th level of the true martial arts, Qin Shujian finally felt a sense of fullness in his dantian. However, a feeling was just a feeling. According to his estimation, there was still a certain distance to the real limit. Subsequently, Qin Shujian's gaze fell on the Great Dream Spirit technique, which was already at the 2nd level of the true martial arts. Then, he threw in all the remaining life force. Chapter 194. At that moment, a piece of news spread. The entire Baiyun prefecture was shaken. Marquis Qinshan had rebelled. The army had taken down 1,936 cities in 3 days. More than 10 million people had died in battle, and the imperial court had lost many experts. Even more than 10 divine martial realm experts had been killed. City Lord Cui Zhan of the Mountain Guard City had been defeated. Even though he had the moon-chasing bow, he was still no match for Marquis Qinshan. He had been killed by 3 palm strikes, and his corpse had been hung in public. This was a sudden turn of events. Not only had the Thousand Mountains Prefecture been affected, but the entire 13 prefectures of the Great Zhao had also been affected. After all, this was the first time in history that someone like Marquis Qinshan had rebelled. Now, the Great Zhao was plagued by natural disasters. There were wars and bandits everywhere, and there were also feudal lords rebelling. However, these were just small conflicts. The so-called feudal lords were only in charge of a city or a region. The only decent Marquis Yifeng had been exterminated by the imperial court when he had established the Great Feng Nation. However, Marquis Qinshan was different. Marquis Qinshan was in charge of the entire Thousand Mountains Prefecture. There were 4,300 cities under his control. He could be said to be a feudal lord expert in the Great Zhao. Now, Marquis Qinshan had rebelled. This directly caused the already unstable Great Zhao to fall into a precarious situation. When he received this piece of news, Qin Shujian was also stunned for a moment. However, he quickly recovered. I didn't expect that someone would dare to rebel after the Great Zhao had ruled hundreds of millions of territories for thousands of years. Either Marquis Qinshan has some other confidence, or the Great Zhao is no longer as strong as it used to be. He thought about it for a while and could roughly figure out some things. Marquis Qinshan was not someone the other feudal lords could compare to. He had once controlled 4,300 cities in the Thousand Mountains Prefecture. The possibility of such a person acting impulsively was very small. The most likely possibility was that he had sensed some signs or had an extremely powerful trump card. Or else, he would not have given up on being a feudal lord and become a rebel. However, Qin Shujian quickly put this matter aside for the time being. No matter what happened to the Thousand Mountains Prefecture, the true Liang Mountain Dominion was only a small part of it. As long as the entire Great Zhao was not in chaos, it would not affect this place for the time being. Furthermore, compared to the situation of the entire Great Zhao, what kind of storm could a small True Dominion sect cause? Now, Marquis Qianshan had rebelled and more than 10 cultivators of the God Martial Realm had died in a single battle. As for Lingwu and Jinwu, there was no need to mention them. Qin Shujian did not think that he could really run amok in the world just because he had a Dao artifact in hand. It was the city lord of Mountain Guard City with the Dao artifact. He didn't even know if the hanging corpses had been put down. Perhaps it was because of Marquis Qianshan. Or maybe he had other concerns. Qin Shujian also felt an inexplicable sense of urgency. Although he was now at the peak of the true martial realm, there was still a long way to go before he could become a true powerhouse. Forget it, let's continue cultivating. Qin Shujian then sat down cross-legged. According to the cultivation method of the Great Dream Spirit Capturing Skill, absorbing the spiritual qi of heaven and earth and moving the true yuan around Zhou, a vast amount of spiritual qi lingered in his body. The heaven and earth bow and cloud-piercing arrow were also absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. On the contrary, the Qianshan blood stood to one side. However, it did not absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth to temper its body like the other spirit objects or spirit weapons. It was more like a guard protecting Qin Shujian. Meanwhile, Qin Shujian had already closed his eyes and was circulating the Great Dream Spirit Capturing Skill slowly. Although he was now only a 10th stage true martial realm cultivator, he cultivated more than one cultivation technique. Every time a cultivation technique was deduced to the 10th stage true martial realm, a different kind of realization would surge in his mind. These realizations overlapped with each other. This made Qin Shujian feel as if he could understand and dissect the changes of every stage of the true martial realm. This also allowed him to cultivate other cultivation techniques. He had a much faster improvement speed than others. 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these days, Marquis Qianshan's rebellion was getting louder and louder. The imperial court had already deployed troops to suppress him. However, the true dominion of Liang Mountain was still peaceful. After all, the Origin sect was overseeing a region. As long as the Origin sect was not in chaos then, the true dominion of Liang Mountain would not be in chaos. However, although the true dominion of Liang Mountain seemed peaceful on the surface, there were still some places that were not truly peaceful. On the Lion-Tiger Plain, there were many beast clans there. Following the upgrade of the true dominion, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth had increased and the strength of the beast clans had also increased. Beast clans above the 5th stage martial realm were considered rare. Until now, beast clans above the 5th stage martial realm were everywhere. There were even a few 10th stage martial realm beast clans. The strongest beast clan, however, it was still the Ox Demon Lord overseeing the Ox Demon Cave. It was unknown whether it was because of his innate talent or because of other reasons. After the Ox Demon Lord's strength had broken through to the 1st stage true martial realm, 2 to 3 months had passed. His cultivation level had also quietly broken through to the 3rd stage true martial realm and was close to the 4th stage true martial realm. Logically speaking, the Ox Demon Lord should be leading a stable life now that his cultivation level had increased, and he had the support of the Origin sect. However, the truth was exactly the opposite. There were more and more Origin sect players now. The number of monsters in the Liang Mountain True Dominion was no longer enough for them to distribute. Even though most of these monsters could be refreshed after death, this process still required a certain amount of time. Therefore, some players turned their attention to the Lion-Tiger Plain. Although some of them knew that the Lion-Tiger Plain was related to the Origin sect, they suppressed the thought of attacking when they were not short of experience points. However, the situation was completely different now that there was not enough experience points to distribute. To the players, nothing was more important than experience points. In the face of experience points, the relationship between the Lion-Tiger Plain and their own sects could be completely ignored. After all, on the Lion-Tiger Plain, a large number of beast clans were recuperating there. In the eyes of the players, This was a continuous wave of experience points waving at them. Therefore, the players attacked. The current level of the players was not low. Unless they had entered the game recently, their cultivation levels were basically at the 7th stage martial realm and above. There was even a 1st stage true martial realm. With such strength, most of the beast clans on the lion-tiger plane were no match for the players. Instantly, the beast clans were massacred one after another. Although the ox demon commander was a salted fish, since the other party had come knocking on his door, how could he turn a blind eye? In less than half a month's time, he had already defeated countless waves of players. However, the players were still enjoying themselves. They continued to invade the lion-tiger plane, causing the ox demon lord to be deeply distressed, and an undetectable fear. There were simply too many players, and their average strength was not weak. Although he was already at the 3rd stage true martial realm, many ants could bite an elephant to death. Facing so many players, there were times when the ox demon lord could not hold on any longer. The ox demon cave was currently under his control. As long as the ox demon cave was not destroyed, all the beast clans that belonged to the ox demon cave could be revived after 3 days if they were killed by the players. However, he was the lord of the ox demon cave. If he was careless and died, the ox demon cave's power token would be dropped. Then he would be done for. Thinking of this possibility, the ox demon lord's huge body also shuddered. He did not want to die yet. He still had a long time in his monster life. He was already at the 3rd stage true martial realm at such a young age. His future was definitely bright. That's right, I can't die yet. If I were to die in the hands of players, that would be too much of a loss. I have to think of a way. The ox demon lord's not very bright mind began to quickly think of a way to deal with this situation. All of a sudden, he remembered that he seemed to have paid Yuanzong a protection fee. Now that this problem had occurred, Yuanzong had no reason to stand by and do nothing. Shortly after, the ox demon lord's body trembled slightly. Immediately after, there was a series of distortions. A tall and sturdy man with 2 horns on his head walked out of the cave and headed towards the boundary of Mount Liang. On the peak of Mount Liang, Qin Shujian, who was cultivating, suddenly stopped absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. His slightly closed eyes opened. His expression was somewhat puzzled. Why did this ox come to my Mount Liang? Just now, he received a system notification. The lord of the ox demon cave had set foot in the boundary of Mount Liang. In layman's terms, this was the so-called early warning of the heavenly Tao. With Qin Shujian's understanding of the ox demon lord, unless the sky collapsed, he would probably sleep peacefully in the ox demon cave. Not to mention leaving the lion-tiger plains. Even walking out of the ox demon cave's sphere of influence was unlikely. Therefore, although he was puzzled, he still stood up and walked towards Yuanzong. Sect Master. Niu Feng looked at the approaching Qin Shujian and immediately bowed as well. The ox demon lord of the ox demon cave has already entered the boundary of Mount Liang. In order to not cause any trouble, you should send someone to bring him up. The ox demon cave? Niu Feng was slightly startled. However, he quickly remembered where the ox demon cave was. He then nodded and said, "Leave this matter to me. If he comes, tell him to meet me at the inherited martial arts hall."
Yes.
After giving a simple explanation, Qin Shujian no longer cared about this matter. On the other side, after receiving Qin Shujian's instructions, Niu Feng did not arrange for anyone else to go. Instead, he chose to go and meet with Yuanzong himself. At the foot of Mount Liang, before the ox demon lord could even get close to Yuanzong, he was stopped by the outer sect disciples who lived at the foot of the mountain. The 2 horns on his head did not look like an ordinary person's, which caused many people to be wary. "I'm the ox demon lord of the ox demon cave. I'm here to greet Yuanzong's sect master." The ox demon cave? Hearing this, many people looked at each other. Some of the players were also shocked. They were familiar with the ox demon cave. They were also familiar with the ox demon lord. During this period of time when they were attacking the lion-tiger plains, many players had already killed their way to the front of the ox demon lord. However, in their memories, he was clearly a big green ox. He looked completely different from the person in front of them. At this moment, Niufeng also came down from the mountain. When he saw the Ox Demon Lord, he immediately recognized him. He immediately said in a deep voice, "Let me handle this matter. All of you move aside." Chapter 195. When he entered the martial inheritance hall, Ox Demon Lord was still in a daze. It was not because of any other reason. It was because he had encountered too many auras along the way that made him tremble. He had thought that he was not the leader of a force but a weak calf. He had known that the Origin sect had many experts. However, perception was perception. He could only truly feel the shock when he saw them face to face. Experts were as numerous as clouds. Experts were as numerous as rain. Any one of them could probably annihilate the demonic Ox Cave. When he saw Qin Shujian face to face, Ox Demon Lord immediately bowed like the other humans and said, "Ox Demon Cave Overlord, Ox Demon Lord, greets Sect Master Qin. Brother Ox, why have you come to the Origin sect these days instead of resting in the Ox Demon Cave?" Qin Shujian said with a faint smile as he looked at Ox Demon Lord, who was standing respectfully below. This big green ox, his senses were not bad. Although he was a little afraid of death, he had good judgment. He knew when to advance and when to retreat. He understood the situation. When Qin Shujian looked at him with his spirit eye, he discovered that he was already at the 3rd level of the true martial realm. The last time he had seen him, he had only been at the 10th level of the basic martial realm. In just a few months, he had broken through to the 3rd level of the basic martial realm. Then, he would be able to break through to the 3rd level of the true martial realm and reach the inner aura realm. He would be considered an expert in the true dominion. Ox Demon Lord could not help but stroke his ox horns when he heard that. He smiled embarrassedly and said, "Recently, many mutants have been slaughtering the beast clans of the Lion-Tiger Plain. These mutants are not weak and have attacked the Ox Demon Cave many times. Although I am not afraid of these mutants, there are indeed some tough ones among them. If this goes on, I am afraid that the Ox Demon Cave will not be able to protect itself. Therefore, I came here to ask Sect Master Qin for help to save the Ox Demon Cave." For some reason, he always felt an inexplicable chill when he stood in front of Qin Shujian. It was this chill. Thus, the Ox Demon Commander didn't dare to speak nonsense and told the truth in full detail. Mutant? It was only then that Qin Shujian remembered that the number of Yuan sect players had been increasing recently. The demonic Ox Cave was such a huge target. It would be impossible for any player to stop themselves from farming the Green Bull. However, if the Ox Demon Lord hadn't come to explain, he might not have remembered this. After all, as the Sky Origin sect grew stronger and stronger, Qin Shujian no longer placed the Demon Ox Cave in his eyes. When I was poor in the past, he would still remember the 3,000 taels of protection fee. As for now, forget it. Looking at the respectful Ox Demon Lord below, Qin Shujian said in a low voice, "I can give you some pointers regarding the Inhumans, but you have to understand that it is very difficult to restrain the Inhumans. Perhaps the majority of the Inhumans would obey on the surface, but there was no guarantee that no one would secretly make a move against the demonic Bull Cave. After all, there are those who can be thieves for 1,000 days, but there is no such thing as guarding against thieves for 1,000 days. Then what should I do?" The Ox Demon Lord scratched his ears and cheeks, looking anxious and impatient. He was really afraid of those Inhumans. Not only were they not weak, but they were also very difficult to deal with. If this went on, the Ox Demon Lord believed that the demonic Bull Cave wouldn't last until next month. However, Qin Shujian's words were not without reason. He couldn't ask the other party to send an expert to oversee the demonic Bull Cave at all times. Then, he wouldn't have the final say in the demonic Bull Cave, and the demonic Bull Cave wouldn't be able to afford to hire an expert. Qin Shujian said, "Now that the demonic Bull Cave occupies the Lion-Tiger Plain and gives the Sky Origin sect tributes every year, it won't be a problem for the Sky Origin sect to lend a hand during a critical moment. However, this is the true dominion after all. A power without a physical invulnerability realm cultivator overseeing it is ultimately too weak. If the demonic Bull Cave lacks an inner invulnerability realm cultivator, then there is no need to say more. The Sky Origin sect can protect it for a while, but it can't keep an eye on the lion-tiger plain all the time. After a long time, if an accident really happens, in the end, he paused and didn't speak. The ox-demon lord, who was beside him, stood rooted to the ground. His boorish face was full of impatience, hesitation, and struggle. In the end, he seemed to have made some kind of decision. Then, he cupped his fists respectfully and said, "If the demonic bull cave is willing to merge with the Sky Origin sect, would Sect Master Qin be willing to take us in? Be carefree and be an overlord, or live on." The ox-demon lord obviously chose the latter. He still had a long life and a bright future ahead of him. He couldn't lose it just like that. The demonic bull cave is willing to submit. Do you accept? Looking at the message, Qin Shujian could also understand that the ox-demon lord was probably really scared of the players. He silently chose to agree. Qin Shujian smiled and said, "Since Brother Ox has already thought it through, the demonic bull cave will officially merge with the Sky Origin sect. For this reason, the Sky Origin sect will open a demon lineage. You will be the demon lineage elder, and your position will be the same as that of the other lineages. As for the territory, you can still stay in the Lion-Tiger Plains, or choose a mountain within the Sky Origin sect's territory to be the base of the lineage." "Thank you, Sect Master." The Ox-Demon Horde leader immediately felt the aura on his body become a little stronger. In the blink of an eye, he understood that this was due to Yuanzong's influence. Immediately, he chuckled and said, "This old ox is still used to the Lion-Tiger Plains. I hope that Sect Master can agree." "No problem. Later on, I will announce to the whole sect about Elder Ox." Qin Shujian nodded. Then, he looked at Ox Dali's attributes. This ox-demon lord's identity was already gone. Instead, it was replaced by the two words elder. As for his realm, it had changed from the original one to the current two. As for his loyalty, Qin Shujian secretly nodded again. 90 points. This loyalty wasn't low. This also proved that Ox Dali really didn't have too many crooked thoughts. As for the annexation of the demonic bull cave, Qin Shujian could also feel that the Sky Origin sect's luck had increased slightly. But to upgrade from a 4th grade sect to a 5th grade sect, it was still too far away. Even if he threw in more than 10 points of luck, it didn't cause any waves. According to his estimation, a 1st grade sect might only have the effect of 1 point of luck. If it was possible, Qin Shujian hoped that when he broke through to the Spirit Martial Realm, he could upgrade the sect to a 5th grade sect. If that was the case, the strength of the Sky Origin sect would undergo a huge leap. It wouldn't decline when it became a sect of the Spirit Domain. After Ox Dali left, Qin Shujian immediately announced that the demonic bull cave would officially join the Sky Origin sect. Ox Dali would become the inner sect elder of the Sky Origin sect. The demonic bull cave would also officially become a member of the Sky Origin sect. Instantly, the players who were still preparing to attack the demonic bull cave all looked as though they had lost their parents. I was wondering who that guy with horns on his head was. Now that I think about it, it's definitely that ox-demon lord, Lu Dazhong said angrily. After entering the game, the small monsters were easy to kill, but the boss was hard to defeat. Now that he understood the strength of the ox-demon lord, he was prepared to lead people to clear the dungeon in one fell swoop. In the end, the other party surrendered. It wasn't a simple surrender. It was a complete surrender. When he thought about how he had to greet Ox Dali when he saw him in the future, Lu Dazhong suddenly felt as though he was forced to eat hot shit. It wasn't just Lu Dazhong. Even the other players who were preparing to attack the demonic bull cave had interesting expressions. But so what? The demonic bull cave joining the Sky Origin sect was a fact. Unless they really wanted to betray the sect. Or else, they definitely couldn't attack the demonic bull cave. Betraying the sect for a dungeon's experience, not many players would do such a thing. So, the players could only give up on the idea of attacking the demonic bull cave. However, not only did their massacre of the Lion-Tiger Plains not stop, it became even more intense. Yes, your demonic bull cave is now part of the Sky Origin sect. We can't touch you. But there are so many beasts and mutated beasts in the Lion-Tiger Plains. They can't all belong to the demonic bull cave. What does it have to do with the demonic bull cave? With this kind of mentality, the players vented all their anger towards Oxdali on these ordinary beasts. But soon, Oxdali, who returned to the demonic bull cave, announced that the demonic bull cave was completely abolished. From now on, it would become the demon vein. In addition, all the beasts in the lion-tiger plains would belong to the demon vein. Suddenly, the players who were originally slaughtering the beasts were stunned. Then, there were players who gritted their teeth and laughed in anger. What a good elder ox. We formed a grudge over this matter. If there's a chance in the future, I'll properly settle this account with you. After saying that, he turned around and left. The other players also left with gloomy expressions. They originally wanted to vent their anger. In the end, Oxdali's decision made them feel that not only was their anger not vented, it was accumulating more and more. Finally, the lion-tiger plains, this treasure land for farming monsters, finally became a thing of the past. The remaining players had no choice but to shift their gazes away from here and look towards the endless mountain range. If one were to talk about where the monsters were the strongest, that was definitely the endless mountain range. However, there were too many powerful beasts there. Even if the players formed a team and headed there, they were often in danger of being wiped out. If they weren't sufficiently prepared, very few players would set foot in there. After all, it was because although there were true martial realm players appearing one after another, there were still too few of them. After the Liang Mountain True Dominion leveled up, the endless mountain range became stronger. There were more and more powerful true martial realm beasts there. There was no lack of physical invulnerability realm beasts. Previously, there was a small team made up entirely of true martial realm first stage players who went to explore the endless mountain range. In the end, they encountered a physical invulnerability realm beast and were directly wiped out. For the players, each death would cause them to drop a level. If they died a few more times, their level might directly drop to a certain level. Therefore, it was best to avoid the punishment of death as much as possible. Since entering the game, the experience required to level up cultivation techniques had been increasing. Leveling up was also getting slower and slower. If they died a few more times, then there was really no point in playing. However, there weren't many places in the Liang Mountain True Dominion where they could farm monsters. Therefore, no matter how dangerous the endless mountain range was, they could only explore there. Chapter 196. Rumble. Rumbles seemed to be coming from heaven and earth. Surging heaven and earth spirit chi swept in all directions, soaking the entire true domain of Mount Liang. In the nine-leaf ordinary realm, at this moment, there was also a huge amount of heaven and earth spirit chi that was constantly flowing in. As time went by, the density of spirit chi increased steadily, gradually surpassing the level of the ordinary realm. At the same time, many cultivators who had reached the 10th stage of the martial initiation realm suddenly realized that the shackles that had blocked their cultivation realm had quietly disappeared. Such a sudden change. Immediately, some people thought that perhaps another expert had broken through the shackles of the ordinary realm and become a protectorate lord. However, very soon, some people abandoned this thought. If someone had really broken through the shackles, it was impossible for there to only be such a small commotion. Soon, regardless of whether it was the living beings of the ordinary realm or the players, they all received a message similar to the heavenly Tao or the system. Contaminated by the true domain of Mount Liang's spirit chi, the nine-leaf ordinary realm has officially been upgraded to a true domain and merged into the true domain of Mount Liang. Boom! This news directly caused the entire nine-leaf ordinary realm to be shocked. Some players who had stayed in the nine-leaf ordinary realm to break through the shackles and become a protectorate lord had to say something in their hearts. F***CK. I didn't even go to the true domain to break through the shackles and become a protectorate lord. Now you're telling me that I'm automatically promoted? I didn't expect this to happen. F***CK. Many players cursed angrily. However, no matter how much they cursed, it couldn't change the fact that the nine-leaf ordinary realm no longer existed and had been renamed the true domain of Mount Liang. Instantly, some players who wanted to break through the shackles left. They couldn't stay here any longer. They could only go to other ordinary realms. Ever since Peng Qing broke through the shackles and became a protectorate lord, the players understood that becoming a protectorate lord was no longer unattainable. As long as they had enough strength, there would be a day when they would become a protectorate lord. To the players, becoming a protectorate lord didn't necessarily have many goals. Perhaps it was just for the reputation. To have the title of a protectorate lord, that was definitely one of the best among the players. Inside the Yuan sect, Qin Shujian was also shocked. When the heaven and earth spirit chi had skyrocketed just now, he had mistakenly thought that something had happened. But then, as the protectorate lord, he had also received a notification from the system. It was only then that he realized that the spirit chi of the neighboring ordinary realms had been contaminated by the true dominion of the Liang Mountain and integrated into the true dominion of the Liang Mountain. Logically speaking, it would take at least a few years for the other ordinary realms to level up due to the spiritual energy interference. However, less than half a year had passed since he had ascended from the true dominion of the Mount Liang true dominion to the nine-leaf ordinary realm. He thought for a moment. Qin Shujian could only blame it on Yuanzong. After all, there were many experts in the Essence sect. More than 1,000 inner astral realm cultivators breathed in and out the heaven-earth spirit chi. The spirit chi produced by this was much more powerful than the true dominion that had just been advanced. Under the condition of inhaling and exhaling the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, the spirit chi density of the entire Liang Mountain true dominion was slightly higher than that of an ordinary true dominion. In this way, it wasn't impossible for it to speed up the advancement of the neighboring ordinary realms. Subsequently, Qin Shujian stopped thinking about it. Although the Liang Mountain true dominion had absorbed an ordinary realm and doubled its original size, these ordinary realms still had their own division of power. If Yuanzong wanted to take over these ordinary realms directly, it wouldn't be easy to decide. Therefore, it wouldn't be too late for him to make other plans after the expansion of the true dominion calmed down. The Oxfiend Cave had submitted. Apart from the endless mountain range that couldn't be touched and the immortal plain that had turned into a forbidden land, the chaotic stone forest, the Shining Plain, and the lion-tiger plain had all come under Yuanzong's control. As the branches were established, these few ordinary realms were firmly under Yuanzong's control. Ancient trees covered the sky and the sun, and mountain ranges rose and fell one after another in the ordinary realms. From time to time, shocking beastly roars could be heard. Faintly, the ground was trembling, as if something huge was fighting. Every time I come to the endless mountain range, I feel an indescribable pressure. This place isn't suitable for humans. Wang Ju looked at his surroundings as if he had entered a primeval forest. Beside him was Lu Dazhong and a group of Yuanzong's inner sect disciples. After they stepped into the first stage true martial realm, the basic martial realm monsters could no longer provide much experience. Originally, they could still farm on the lion-tiger plain. However, the cowardly ox demon lord had surrendered and become their elder, so they could no longer farm on the other beast clans. They had no choice. They could only go through the endless mountain range. Lin Kuan-Yong was constantly vigilant of his surroundings. Then, he looked at Lu Dazhong and said, "Lu Dazhong, you have been here many times. Don't hide anything you know. Tell us directly. Let's discuss and see if we can get some experience before we leave." Upon hearing this, everyone else's gazes landed on Lu Dazhong. Although his reputation wasn't very reliable, his strength couldn't be underestimated. If anyone in the Yuan Zone had entered the endless mountain range many times, it would probably be Lu Dazhong. Furthermore, although he had died so many times in the endless mountain range, his cultivation level was still stable at the first stage true martial realm. Based on this alone, they knew that he couldn't be underestimated. Lu Dazhong said in a low voice, "I haven't explored the endless mountain range too much. However, I know that there is a wolf pack about 10 miles ahead. The Wolf King in the lead is probably at the third stage true martial realm. It also has a pack of wild wolves above the sixth stage martial realm. There are about 300 to 400 of them. In addition, there are 2 wild wolves at the first stage true martial realm. With our current strength, we can conquer this wolf pack. A Wolf King at the third stage true martial realm. 2 elite leaders at the first stage true martial realm. together with 300 to 400 ordinary wild monsters at the 6th stage martial realm. Wang Ju silently calculated. Including himself, there were 13 players at the 1st stage true martial realm. Thinking of this, he immediately nodded and said, "If that's the case with our strength, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with the wolf pack. I'll lead the way," Lu Dazhong said first. Seeing this, the others didn't object. Then, the group of people changed their direction slightly and walked forward. Not long after, Lu Dazhong stopped and looked at the dark brown feces not far ahead. Suddenly, he walked closer and observed for a while. Then, he turned back and said, "This is the feces of the wolf pack. We've now stepped into their territory. With their sense of smell, I'm afraid that they've already detected our presence." Instantly, everyone else's expression turned solemn. Then, they each observed the surrounding environment, always paying attention to any movement that might happen at any time. In such a cautious manner, the group continued to walk forward. Soon, everyone's expression gradually turned solemn, because they had already smelled the smell of blood in the air. Were the wolves hunting? Or did something happen? Not only the others, but even Lu Dazhong was a little confused. When they walked forward for a while, their field of vision seemed to widen a lot. They saw the bodies of wild wolves lying all over the ground. Some of them had their bellies cut open, and some were even directly crushed into meat paste. A huge wolf with silver hair, no smaller than the ox demon lord's body, was lying on the ground. Its eyes had already lost the spirit it should have. "This is the body of the Wolf King." Lu Dazhong's face also changed at this moment. Looking at the hole in the Wolf King's head, it looked more like it had been killed with a single blow. Even the others' faces changed at this moment. If the Wolf King of true martial realm level 3 could be killed with a single blow, then the attacker was probably not just an inner or a warrior. And, looking at the corpses all over the ground, Wang Ju took a deep breath and said, "The corpses haven't respawned yet. This should have just happened. I wonder if the thing that slaughtered the wolves has left. If it's still nearby, it's probably hard for us to deal with it, given that it's at least an outer or a warrior." Swish! There came the sound of something breaking through the air. Then, a huge black shadow appeared. Lu Dazhong and the others suddenly looked up. They saw a huge bird with 3 heads and 6 eyes, a wingspan of 50 feet, and long greenish-black feathers all over its body swooping down. Its pair of sharp claws were like curved hooks, flashing with chilling coldness. "Run!" Without thinking, the group of players turned around and ran. As for the idea of fighting, it had never occurred to them. How could they fight it? Just by looking at its body, one could tell that it was at least 10 meters tall. Its wingspan was even more impressive. The aura emanating from it made these true martial realm level 1 players tremble. The two sides had only met face to face. Lu Dazhong and the others knew that they weren't on the same level as the other party. Fortunately, the mountain range was filled with towering trees. Although the gaps between the trees weren't small, they definitely weren't large either. If the monster wanted to swoop down, it had to cut down the trees. Otherwise, it could only watch from the sky. "Does anyone have the art of insight? Let's see what this monster is," shouted a player hurriedly. The wind stirred up by the falling trees behind them was already very close. Hearing this, Miao Yuqing turned around and casually cast the Art of Insight. Her body didn't stop at all. The Art of Insight can't detect it. This monster's strength is probably not as simple as an outer or a warrior. F***CK. Don't tell me we're in such big trouble on our first trip out. Hearing this, many people were speechless. Even the Art of Insight couldn't detect it. It was very likely that the monster's strength was too strong for the detection to fail. Boom! Suddenly, Wang Jiu turned around and slashed out with his long saber. A terrifying saber aura burst out and collided with the sharp claws that were about to touch his face. In an instant, the saber aura disappeared. The long saber that was comparable to a 7th-grade refined weapon broke into several pieces as if it had collided with something terrifying. Then, a terrifying gust of wind erupted. It directly sent him flying out. There was no time to be shocked. Wang Jiu took advantage of the gust of wind that sent him flying to forcefully twist his body and dashed out of the endless mountains. In this kind of situation, no one cared about each other anymore. Everyone who could escape was one person. Not only did his full strength attack not hurt the monster at all, but his long saber, which was a 7th grade refined weapon, was also shattered. Wang Jiu completely extinguished the thought of fighting with it. This wasn't a fight at the same level at all. Let's go quickly. The monster won't walk out of the endless mountains. As long as we rush out, there won't be a problem. Another player also roared angrily. He turned around and struck out with his palm. His true essence seemed to have turned into roaring flames. However, he didn't even pause for a moment. He directly fled into the distance. Chapter 197. At this moment, the endless mountain range was in chaos. Lu Dazhong and the others were being chased by the monster, but along the way, they encountered more players who entered the endless mountain range. So, after organizing a group of dozens of true martial artists to fight the monster together, and after more than half of them were burned to death by the monster's flames, the rest began to flee again. Not only that, other beasts felt the monster's aura. At this moment, they were all frantically fleeing as if it was some terrifying existence. For a time, whether it was humans or beasts, they were all fleeing in the same direction. And when they were close to the border of the endless mountain range, these beasts finally stopped fleeing and turned to crawl on the ground, trembling, not daring to make any movements. As for the players and the others, when they saw the scene in front of them, they were all overjoyed. Quick, the exit is in front. No matter how fierce this thing is, it shouldn't go out of the endless mountain range. We'll be safe once we get out. For a time, all the players were full of energy and rushed out of the mountain range. Lin, a player, looked at the fierce monster that was chasing them. When he stepped out of the endless mountain range, he turned around and threw a black ball-like thing at the monster. Immediately after, the black ball hit the monster and suddenly exploded into a cloud of greenish-black mist. It fell on the monster's feathers and made a sizzling sound, but it didn't cause any damage. An unbearable stench spread out. At this moment, it completely angered the monster. It was still lingering at the border of the mountain range and seemed to be afraid of something. At this moment, its 6 eyes were bursting with terrifying killing intent, and it immediately rushed out. F***CK. The people who had just escaped the mountain range and didn't have time to catch their breath suddenly felt a terrifying aura coming from behind. When they turned around, they happened to meet the monster's cold eyes. Their faces immediately turned green. Didn't they say that they wouldn't come out? What was the situation now? However, the monster was already above their heads. There were no towering trees in the mountain range to block it, so it was completely unrestrained. In an instant, many players were massacred. Liang Mountain, Qin Shujian, who was originally cultivating, suddenly opened his eyes. Just now, he noticed a powerful aura erupting in the area of Liang Mountain. This aura was fierce and tyrannical, making him frown. There was no hesitation. Qin Shujian immediately got up and headed towards the source of the aura. As for the other experts in Yuan's sect who had sensed it, just as they were about to move, they heard a voice. "Don't worry about it. I will take care of this matter." Hearing this, they had no choice but to give up. On the other side, the monsters were still chasing after the players. At this moment, its ferocious nature was completely aroused. Boom! A gigantic palm strike pierced through the air, and the monster instantly sensed the threat. The middle head of the 3 heads immediately spat out a burst of flames, eliminating the palm strike. But because of this, its killing motion also paused for a moment. Sect Master. When the fleeing players saw Qin Shujian flying through the air and facing off against the monster, they felt much more at ease. It was true that monsters were scary. However, in their opinion, he was definitely no match for their sect master. After all, the reputation of Mount Liang's campmaster was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Qin Shujian didn't pay any attention to these players. His attention was now completely focused on the monster in front of him. As his spiritual eye flashed, the monster's attributes also appeared in his eyes. Name: 3-headed green feather kite. Title: identity, affiliation, faction level, realm other than the name. All the other attributes were blank and invisible. Three-headed green feather kite? Qin Shujian's face was a little solemn. Rather than a name, it was better to say that it was the race of the three-headed monster in front of him. As for the other attributes being invisible, it meant that the strength of the three-headed green feather kite was definitely not as simple as the true martial realm. At the moment when his spiritual eye probed, the three-headed green feather kite seemed to have been provoked by something and instantly became furious. Immediately, it ignored the other players and charged towards Qin Shujian. Its gigantic body swooped down fiercely, stirring up a terrifying gust of wind along the way. Qin Shujian remained motionless in the air, and a layer of light blue protective shield suddenly appeared on his body. Physical invulnerability adept. External release of protective chi. Those iron hook-like claws that could easily shatter grade 7 weapons landed on the protective shield of protective chi. However, only caused the shield to crack and didn't shatter it directly. Evil creature. Qin Shujian blasted out a seal with one hand, and a terrifying burst of true essence instantly turned into the shadow of a mountain, which then heavily bombarded the three-headed green feather kite. Great Wilderness Demon Suppression Seal. Moving Mountain Seal. Chirp. Roar. The three-headed green feather kite let out a cry that sounded like a bird's chirp and a beast's roar. Under the bombardment of the mountain, its gigantic body was forced back in the air, and it desperately flapped its wings to stabilize its body. Qin Shujian took another step forward, and his body suddenly became a head taller than the three-headed green feather kite. With one hand, another moving mountain seal fell, directly suppressing the three-headed green feather kite's broad back. Chirp. Roar. With another mournful cry, the three-headed green feather kite's gigantic body could no longer maintain its flying posture under the suppression of this force and fell toward the ground. Boom! The gigantic body fell to the ground with a loud bang, and a shallow pit formed directly under the three-headed green feather kite. It suffered 2 powerful attacks in a row. Furious, the three-headed green feather kite suddenly raised its 3 heads. Immediately, one head spat out cold ice, one head spat out flames, and the last head spat out green poisonous smoke. When the 3 gathered together, not only did they not have the slightest restraint, but they complemented each other and swept toward Qin Shujian in an instant. Qin Shujian did not dodge. As his hands formed a seal, a terrifying aura brewed, and immediately, a faint outline of an illusory body appeared in the void. As the seal fell, the terrifying body also pressed down with a palm. The vast and terrifying power immediately suppressed the three-headed green feather kite's attack, and the remaining force continued to fall downward. Bang! As the terrifying palm fell, the three-headed green feather kite let out a mournful cry. Its gigantic body suddenly exploded, and more than half of its greenish-black feathers were gone. Blackish-red blood dripped from the wound to the ground. Then, it corroded the ground, creating one pit after another. The next moment, the three-headed green feather kite rose from the ground and fled toward the endless mountain range without looking back. Even though it was not very intelligent, it finally knew fear now. On Qin Shujian's body, the three-headed green feather kite felt a fatal threat. That feeling, it should not have appeared in the true dominion, but the truth was right in front of its eyes. Instinctively, it had no choice but to escape. Qin Shujian did not move in the void. Instead, he spat out a word like a lotus flower. Slash. The 1,000 mountain blood was suddenly unsheathed, and an endless sharpness burst forth from the scabbard, instantly slicing the surrounding heaven-earth spirit chi into pieces. Then, a saber sound was heard, causing the three-headed green feather kite's body to tremble slightly. Then, a flash of cold light suddenly appeared, accompanied by a shocking thunderclap that exploded in the void. When the crystal saber slashed across, the three-headed green feather kite's 3 gigantic heads suddenly fell to the ground, and a large amount of blood spurted out. Its body, which was originally flying in the void, could no longer maintain its balance and fell heavily. Meanwhile, the 1,000 mountain blood was already in the scabbard. Everything that had happened just now seemed like an illusion. Only the gigantic corpse falling to the ground showed what exactly had happened. The players watching the battle from afar were shocked when they saw this scene. They knew that the three-headed green feather kite was no match for Qin Shujian. However, they had never thought that it would be such a one-sided situation. From the beginning to the end, the three-headed green feather kite did not even have the strength to resist before it was suppressed by the other party. That valiant strength made people feel apprehensive. This was especially so when the Dao weapon was unsheathed at the end. They did not even have time to see the situation clearly before they saw the three-headed green feather kite's corpse being separated from its body. Just as the players did not know whether to advance or retreat, Qin Shujian landed beside the three-headed green feather kite. When he saw the three bird heads, he immediately put them into his storage ring. "You have the head of the three-headed green feather kite." Then, his gaze fell on the corpse again, and he left after taking a few more glances. The reason why he took the three heads was because he saw that the other party could spit out ice, fire, and poisonous fog. He felt that it was a little strange, so he did so. As for the remaining corpse, Qin Shujian could not see any value. It was also because the storage ring had a lot of space that he simply did not care about it. After Qin Shujian left, the onlooking players immediately rushed toward the three-headed green feather kite's corpse. Before the corpse was refreshed, then they collected and cut it up, taking away all the things that they thought were valuable. Such a powerful monster. Even if it was dead, the corpse was definitely not something that ordinary things could compare to. On the other side, Qin Shujian had already returned to Yuan sect. The huge commotion just now had actually attracted the attention of many people. However, when they thought of the previous words, the experts of Yuan sect suppressed the curiosity in their hearts and did not go forward to check it out. At this moment, when they saw their sect master return, their hearts that were originally hanging in the air were also put down. Qin Shujian had returned. That powerful aura had disappeared again. Combined with the commotion just now, it was not difficult to guess what exactly had happened. After returning to Yuan sect, Qin Shujian directly found the Cosmos Bow, then threw out the head of the three-headed green feather kite and asked, "Do you know what this thing is used for?" If the Cosmos Bow could transform, it would definitely be dumbfounded at this moment. Looking at the head of the three-headed green feather kite that had died with its eyes wide open, it hesitated for a moment and said, "In my opinion, this should be the head of some powerful monster. What's the use of it? I don't know." Hearing that, Qin Shujian's face darkened slightly. "I don't know why you are hesitating. This is not a waste of time." Chapter 198. The Three-Headed Green Feather Kite. To the Origin sect, this was just a small episode. Although many players had died, there were no irreparable losses. However, this time, Qin Shujian had made a move. It also made the other players understand that there was still a big gap between them and this big shot. Although everyone was in the true martial realm, when they really fought, the difference was like heaven and earth. A three-headed green feather kite had killed many players and forced them to flee. Even the top first-stage true martial realm players could not withstand a single blow from dozens of people. More than half of them were burned to death. This was also a powerful monster. However, it could not withstand a few blows from Qin Shujian before its three heads were chopped off. Such strength. The three-headed green feather kite was not the only thing that was crushed. The mentality of many players was also crushed. Soon this time, the video was also uploaded to the forum by the players. Nowadays, the forum was filled with all kinds of videos uploaded. However, there was one thing that was certain. As long as the words Liang Mountain Fort Master were mentioned in the video, it would definitely not disappear. The Liang Mountain True Dominion expanded. After a slight commotion, it quickly calmed down. Soon, the forces that belonged to the original Nine-Leaf Ordinary Dominion and were now integrated into the Liang Mountain True Dominion sent representatives to the Origin sect to pay their respects to the strongest force in the Liang Mountain True Dominion. In the free time, Qin Shujian also met the leaders of these forces. To be honest, the Nine-Leaf Ordinary Dominion had just been integrated. The people of these forces were at most in the 10th stage of the basic martial realm. There were even people in the 8th or 9th stage of the basic martial realm. Such cultivators were a dime a dozen in Yuan sect. If he was not so bored, he would not have met these people. Another half a month passed. During this period, the Liang Mountain True Dominion was relatively peaceful. However, the entire Great Zhao was in turmoil. Marquis Qinshan rebelled. He even set up the terrifying heaven-sealing earth-locking array, which directly imprisoned more than half of the Thousand Mountain Prefecture's territory. They could not use the teleportation array at all. No one had expected that Marquis Qinshan would set up such a huge array without anyone noticing. It was only at the last moment that it shocked the world. The teleportation array was sealed. For the vast Great Zhao, the difficulty of moving troops had increased exponentially. When it was time for the Great Zhao to gather its troops, Marquis Qinshan had already finished reorganizing the cities that he had conquered. He had formed a straight line in front of him, and he could only defend against the attacks of the imperial court. The two sides had fought several times, and both sides had suffered losses. In this way, this also gave others the opportunity to see the weakness of the imperial court. Hence, the other vassals who had the intention of rebelling also took this opportunity to raise their troops and rebel. The pressure on the rebels, who were already under siege by the imperial court, was greatly alleviated. Regarding the situation of the Great Zhao, Qin Shujian was not completely clueless. Now that Yuan sect's influence was not small, it was impossible for him to let the people of Yuan sect live in peace. Until now, there were already many Yuan sect disciples who had gone out to train. These people had traveled all over the surrounding True Dominion and even further. Other than that, Qin Shujian had even asked some people to set up shops in various big cities and even other True Dominion areas. They were specifically used to sell the spirit herbs and ores that sect disciples had submitted in exchange for contribution points. Although they were working with the carrier trading company, all eggs could not be placed in the same basket. Now that Yuan sect's influence was growing, it naturally had its own industry. Because of this, some Yuan sect disciples who had gone out to train would pass on the relevant information to the shops under Yuan sect. Then, it would be passed up through the ranks and eventually landed in the hands of Qin Shujian. Based on this reason, this also allowed Qin Shujian to obtain a lot of information even if he did not step out of his house. However, although he did not step out of his house, his strength was growing every moment. When he had killed the three-headed green feather kite, the great desolate devil-suppressing seal had been raised to the point of perfection. Now, by relying on his own cultivation, the Great Dream Spirit Capture technique had broken through to the 5th level of the true martial section. The players were getting stronger and stronger. The life force source that he harvested was also increasing. And now, in just half a month, the life force source on the attribute panel had reached the level of 110,000 points. And as the life force source reached 100,000 points, apart from the 2 Dao entry-level martial arts, all the other martial arts techniques had an additional plus behind them. Among them, this included the Wisdom King Prison Breaking Saber that had reached the unity of heaven and man level. This was a mid-grade true level martial art. Qin Shujian rarely used it anymore. Most of the time, when facing strong enemies, he would use the mid-grade divine level Great Desolate Devil Suppressing Seal. If facing an ordinary opponent, he could easily suppress them with his own true essence. So, speaking of which, the Wisdom King Prison Breaking Saber was not very useful to him. However, the Wisdom King Prison Breaking Saber at the unity of heaven and man level is still in the category of martial arts. However, the Wisdom King Prison Breaking Saber at the entry level will definitely undergo a transformation. If I can raise it, it might allow me to have a more thorough understanding of the Saber Dao. After obtaining the Great Dream Spirit Capture technique, Qin Shujian realized that the spirit martial arts realm seemed to involve the level of the mind. If he could raise it, perhaps it would have a lot of benefits in the future. Looking at the pulsating life force from time to time, he finally decided to raise the Wisdom King Prison Breaking Saber. It was not a big deal. It was just a waste of 10 or so innate life force. The loss was not too big. Anyway, even if all these life force were to be used on the Great Dream Spirit Capture technique, it would not be able to raise it to the level of perfection. With a thought, 100,000 life force disappeared in an instant. The Wisdom King Prison Breaking Saber also directly rose from the unity of heaven and man level to the entry level. When the martial art was raised, Qin Shujian only felt that the scene in front of him changed, and in an instant, he was already in a netherworld hell. The ground was cracked, and rolling magma could be seen everywhere. In the sky, there was a blood moon, and smoke covered the clouds and the moon. There were also vengeful spirits wailing and fighting, and the magma swallowed all the creatures that fell in. It was as if this was not a world, but a world that was on the verge of destruction. This was a hell that should not have any creatures. Immediately, a huge body climbed up from the purgatory, holding a long saber burning with red flames, and directly slashed at the ground. This slash seemed to have split the entire earth, and terrifying magma surged, swallowing all the creatures. This slash seemed to have broken some kind of restraint. The entire hell began to tremble. Endless Taoist rhymes turned into a long saber that reached the heavens and the earth. It directly scattered the smoke in the sky, pierced the blood moon, and caused a ray of gentle light to be directly projected into the hell. Everything was melting away. Only the huge body stood proudly in the hell, and no matter how much the magma swept, it could not swallow even a little bit. The long saber in the hand was still burning with flames, as if there were red lotuses looming in it. Soon, the scene was broken. But the first slash that cut through the hell was deeply engraved in Qin Shujian's mind. His original understanding of saber intent had deepened a lot at this moment. Because you have two entry-level martial arts of the same kind, you have automatically fused to obtain a new ability, saber intent. Qin Shujian was startled by the sudden system message. Then, he directly checked his own attributes. The Black Tiger Saber Technique and the Wisdom King Prison Breaking Saber, which were originally in the martial arts section, had disappeared at this moment. In the special ability section, behind the spiritual eye, there was an additional word, saber intent. Special ability, saber intent, 20%? 20% saber intent? Looking at the words above, Qin Shujian thought to himself. After comprehending the Wisdom King Prison Breaking Saber Technique, the saber intent was only 20%. Then, before comprehending it, the saber intent might only be 10%, or even less. When he recalled the two martial arts in his mind again, he realized that although the two martial arts had disappeared from the attribute panel, every move and style was still deeply engraved in his mind. However, after obtaining 20% saber intent, Qin Shujian had a different understanding when looking at the two saber techniques again, especially for the Wisdom King Prison Breaking Saber Technique. Just like when he looked at the Black Tiger Saber Technique, he was no longer restricted to every move and style. Instead, he had the illusion that he could use it easily. Although his realm did not increase, Qin Shujian knew that his strength was stronger than before. When he opened his eyes, a ray of terrifying light burst out from his eyes like endless saber radiance. There was a faint tearing sound in the air. The bow of heaven and earth was silently absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. At this moment, the entire bow suddenly trembled. Just now, it seemed to have felt a terrifying saber radiance pass by, which made the bow of heaven and earth, which was comparable to a middle-grade spiritual weapon, feel a strong threat. After seeing Qin Shujian come out of the cultivation state, the bow of heaven and earth flattered at the right time. 666. Congratulations to the sect master for achieving great success again. From now on, you will be invincible in the world. Okay, stop flattering me. Every word I said was from the bottom of my heart. There is no exaggeration at all. Qin Shujian was in a good mood now. Every time his strength increased, he would feel a sense of fulfillment. At this moment, the bow of heaven and earth's flattery was very pleasing to his ears. He was quite satisfied with this spiritual object that did not have great abilities, but was very pleasant to hear. After that, Qin Shujian's gaze fell on the cloud-piercing arrow and said, "According to your estimate, how long will it take for the cloud-piercing arrow to be completely repaired?" "It should be completely repaired in a month's time." "Okay." Qin Shujian nodded slightly. In his sight, the cloud-piercing arrow no longer looked like it was broken in two. He did not know when. The two broken parts of the arrow had grown back together. However, there were still obvious cracks on the arrow body, which made people understand what kind of damage it had suffered. but in his perception, as the spiritual chi of heaven and earth continued to replenish. The cracks on the cloud-piercing arrow seemed to be decreasing bit by bit. However, this process was extremely slow. If one did not observe carefully, it would be difficult to notice this subtle change. Chapter 199. While Qin Shujian was silently cultivating, his strength was steadily increasing. A piece of news. It caused him to withdraw from his cultivation state. In the courtyard, under the nourishment of the spirit energy, the osmanthus tree grew much faster than it did in other places. Unknowingly, the flowers on the tree had already bloomed, and a refreshing fragrance filled the courtyard. Qin Shujian sat on a stone bench under the shade of the tree and held a letter in his hand. The letter was sent by a member of the Yuan sect. However, the person who wrote the letter was not from the Yuan sect. It was Lin Wanyu, the manager of the profound void true domain of the carrier trading company. Forget it. After staying here for so long, I'm going to get moldy. It's not a bad idea to go out for a walk. Even if I don't gain anything, I'll just take it as a distraction. After burning the letter with his true yuan, Qin Shujian stood up. The ashes dissipated in the wind. Level 10 Yang Fire. The aura attached to the true yuan could easily melt steel. It was even easier to burn a small piece of paper. Perhaps it was because of the influence of the movies in his previous life. But Qin Shujian now directly burned any letter he received after reading it. He did not have the habit of keeping it, although the information in the letter was not important. However, he definitely did not want to one day. So-and-so would hold a letter saying that they knew the secret of his relationship with so-and-so. After leaving the courtyard, Qin Shujian gathered the few elders of the Yuan sect and told them about his trip. After assigning some things, he left Liang Mountain. However, just as he left the Liang Mountain village, he looked at his source of life, and with a thought, he instantly raised the great dream-capturing spirit technique, which he had not been able to raise after many days of bitter cultivation, to the 6th stage. He felt the true yuan increase in his dantian. Qin Shujian sighed with emotion. After all, bitter cultivation is not as fast as using the source of life to raise one's dantian. However, he only sighed with emotion for a while before he noticed the changes in his body. As the great dream-capturing spirit technique advanced to the 6th stage of the true martial technique, originally, his dantian was already filled with quintessential essence. Now, it was overflowing. Qin Shujian also felt that he was getting closer and closer to that mysterious limit. The Liangshan True Dominion was separated from the Mystic Void True Dominion by the Tsangxi True Dominion. However, for Qin Shujian, who had stepped into the path of Tao with his footwork, Qin Shujian had no way to defeat him. The boundaries of the two True Dominion were not that far apart. Back then, he had followed the carrier trading company's fleet and spent half a month or so to arrive at Baifeng City. But now, with Qin Shujian's strength, it was impossible for him to defeat Qin Shujian. Even though they didn't fly in such a high-profile manner, it only took them 2 days to reach this place. Because there was no guide. When Qin Shujian entered the city, he also paid the entrance fee of 3 copper coins. As for this, he didn't say anything, and he didn't feel the anger of someone who was stopped by a domain lord or a sect master. After all, it was impossible for him to show off his identity and say that he was Qin Shujian, Yuan Zong, and so on just for a mere 3 copper coins. In front of a large crowd, Yuan Zong's reputation would probably be completely destroyed. Candy figurines. Beautiful and delicious candy figurines. 2 for 1 copper coin. Rouge and face powder. Walking in Baifeng City, he could hear all kinds of hawking and shouting. Besides the shops on both sides of the street, there were also many small stalls and vendors selling their wares. There were people coming and going all around, creating a lively and peaceful atmosphere. The last time he had come to Baifeng City, he had sat in a carriage and left in a hurry. Speaking of which, Qin Shujian hadn't really seen what Baifeng City looked like. This is the Liangshan Stockade Master? There were many players in Baifeng City. When they saw Qin Shujian's face, some of them, who had seen the video before, were stunned. Instantly, when the other players heard this, their gazes landed on Qin Shujian. The Liangshan Stockade Master? This was a famous big boss. Many people had only seen him on the forum. This was the first time they had seen him in person. If they remembered correctly, the Liangshan True Dominion was quite far away from the Xuanchu True Dominion. The other party didn't stay in Yuanzhong but suddenly came here. Some of the players couldn't help but feel puzzled. At Qin Shujian's level of cultivation, even close gazes couldn't escape his senses. When he shifted his gaze, he happened to meet the eyes of the players who were staring at him. In an instant, those players looked away hurriedly as if they had encountered something terrifying. There was no such thing as a safe zone in this game. What if this big shot was unhappy with him and stabbed him in the back? That would be too much of an injustice. TSK, this batch of players is a little timid. Seeing this, Qin Shujian shook his head secretly and no longer paid any attention to him. Very soon, he arrived in front of the mansion of the Chengyun Trading Company. Although there were guards in front of the mansion, they didn't stop him from entering or leaving. This was because the doors of the trading company were open for business. It was impossible to ask for the identity of every person who came in. Unless it was a really important place inside, there would be special personnel to stop him. After easily entering the room, Yizichen looked at Yizichen. Qin Shujian went directly to the lobby opposite the door. Although it was called a lobby, it was no different from a shop. There were many things on the counter, and many customers were choosing from them. When he entered, immediately, an attendant came forward and asked respectfully, "Welcome, esteemed guest. May I know what you need? I may be able to help." "I want to see Lin Wanyu, Chief Steward Lin. Tell him that Yuan Zong, Qin Shujian, is here to visit." Yuan Zong. The attendant was shocked at first. Then, he came back to his senses and became even more respectful. "Esteemed guest, please follow me. The chief steward has already instructed that if Sect Master Qin comes, I will bring you directly." "Thank you. Sect Master Qin, please." The two of them left the place one after the other. Then, they turned left and right and gradually came to a secluded place. In the main hall, the attendant said, "Sect Master Qin, please take a seat. I will go and report to the chief steward." After speaking, then, he turned and left. It didn't take long for a servant to serve tea. Qin Shujian sensed a familiar aura approaching. Soon after, he heard a voice and saw a figure appear. "Haha, when I heard that Sect Master Qin was coming, I couldn't wait to rush over. May I know if Sect Master Qin is coming in?" His voice was heard before he arrived. Before he could finish his sentence, Lin Wanyu had already stepped into the main hall with a warm smile on his face. Qin Shujian cupped his hands slightly and said with a faint smile, "Chief Steward Lin, you are very busy. It is my honor to be able to come personally." If someone else had said this, I would have silently agreed. However, Sect Master Qin, you are too modest. After sitting down, Lin Wanyu looked at Qin Shujian and said with a smile, "Sect Master Qin's reputation is very well known in the Baiyun Manor. It was impossible for it not to be well known. He had destroyed 7 sects in a few days and established his position as the overlord of the True Dominion. The sects in the True Dominion were terrified when they heard the name Yuan Zong. They didn't dare go against him easily. Even in the Spirit Protectorate and the lands above the Spirit Protectorate, Yuan Zong's reputation spread. After all, as long as such a person didn't die midway, he would definitely become a true expert one day. Therefore, if he didn't want to attract attention, that was completely impossible. Therefore, the importance that the Carrier Travel Trading Company attached to Yuan Zong increased exponentially. After all, even though the Carrier Travel Trading Company was spread throughout the 13 prefectures of the Great Zhao, the Baiyun Manor also had many businesses. The Baiyun Manor also had a considerable share of the True Dominion. Although Yuan Zong hadn't officially announced anything, all the sects in the True Dominion had tacitly acknowledged his position. If they wanted to develop steadily in the True Dominion, it was necessary to have contact with Yuan Zong. As the chief steward of the Mystic Void True Dominion, Lin Wanyu's status was comparable to that of a sect master. In the past, he had been on equal footing with Qin Shujian. However, now, in front of Qin Shujian, his status was unknowingly lower by a notch. Qin Shujian responded to Lin Wanyo's flattery with a smile. Then, he changed the topic and said, I received a letter from the chief steward and came directly to Baifeng City. However, I wonder if the matter mentioned in the letter is true? Upon hearing that the other party was talking about serious matters, Lin Wanyo's face also turned serious as he said, some time ago, a disciple from a fallen sect came. He wanted to auction off his sect's cultivation technique and martial arts in exchange for cultivating resources. Before that sect was defeated, it used to be quite reputable. Its alchemy and blacksmithing techniques were also quite famous. But it was a pity. Even though the sect's alchemy and blacksmithing techniques were not weak, their strength was not high. In the end, their enemies came knocking on their door. Hundreds of years of foundation were destroyed overnight, and only a few people managed to escape. Unfortunately, their enemies still pursued them relentlessly and swore to eliminate them completely. Now that they couldn't hold on any longer, they wanted to sell their sect's cultivation technique and martial arts. They wanted to increase their cultivation level in exchange for a chance to survive. Upon hearing this, Qin Shujian could roughly understand the situation from the other party's words. What price does he want to sell it for? The other party doesn't intend to sell it directly, but wants to auction it. When will the auction start? It should have started earlier, but because Sect Master Qin has not arrived, the Chamber of Commerce has been holding back. Now that Sect Master Qin has arrived, the auction will start tomorrow. Upon hearing this, Qin Shujian also nodded. Tomorrow was just what he wanted. There was no need to waste too much time. Then, he opened his mouth and said, I would like to meet the person from this sect. Is that possible? The Chamber of Commerce has a rule that the matters of the guests must be kept confidential. If the item hasn't been auctioned yet, it will inevitably cause unnecessary trouble. Lin Wanyu was a little hesitant. He shook his head and said, I suggest that Sect Master Qin should wait until the auction is over and get their sect's cultivation technique and martial arts in your hands before asking to meet the buyer. In this way, I can deal with it. Then I'll do as Steward Lin said. In this regard, Qin Shujian did not insist too much. After all, the other party said so. Then everything would wait until the auction was over. Chapter 200. It was nighttime. Qin Shujian was resting in his room. Originally, he had intended to stay at an inn, but Lin Wanyu had strongly invited him, so he decided to stay at the Chongyun Trading Company. Knock. The door is not locked. Please come in. Clang. The door opened, and Lin Wanyu walked in. Looking at Qin Shujian, who was meditating cross-legged, he could not help but praise him. Sect Master Qin is so hardworking. It's no wonder that you are a top-notch expert of the true dominion at such a young age. You are so talented and hardworking. You make me blush with shame. But I have nothing to do. Even if I don't cultivate, I have nothing else to do. Qin Shujian shook his head in response to Lin Wanyu's words. While they were talking, he had finished his cross-legged state and sat down at the round table in the room. Then, he poured 2 cups of tea and said, Chief Steward, please. Thank you. Lin Wanyu thanked him first. Then, he looked at Qin Shujian and said with a smile, Sect Master Qin, you haven't walked around Baifeng City much, right? I saw some when I entered the city. It's rare for Sect Master Qin to come here tonight. Why don't we go out for a walk? I'll bring Sect Master Qin to see what Baifeng City looks like tonight. At this point, Lin Wanyu's eyebrows twitched. Then, he smiled ambiguously and said, Baifeng City's pink brothels are famous. Anyone who comes here will definitely experience it. Looking at his expression, combining his words, Qin Shujian was a little confused. However, he instinctively felt that things were not simple. Pink brothels? After muttering this word a few times in his heart, he suddenly understood. When he looked at Lin Wanyu's expression again, he felt strange no matter how he looked at it. I treat you as a friend. You actually want to bring me, cough, cough. After coughing twice, Qin Shujian shook his head and rejected him. I feel that my cultivation technique has reached a bottleneck. I'm prepared to cultivate properly. I'm afraid I can't accompany you. We'll talk about it again in the future. He did not seem to be lying. Lin Wanyu also looked a little regretful, but he couldn't force it. He immediately got up and said, "Everything should be focused on cultivation. Since Sect Master Qin is about to make a breakthrough, I won't disturb you anymore. Take care, Chief Steward. Goodbye." After walking out of the room, Lin Wanyu looked at the closed door and shook his head, intending to leave. However, after walking for a short while, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. If I remember correctly, Master Qin should be at the 10th level of the martial realm. The 10th level of the martial realm. Above that was the spirit martial realm. However, the shackles of the true dominion still existed. How could he break through without heading to the spirit dominion? Then, he thought of the other party's words and expression. He had a rough understanding of the situation. I didn't expect that a top-notch expert of the true dominion would still be a virgin. Lin Wanyu shook his head and laughed, but he couldn't turn around and expose anything. Some people like women. Some people, however, love to cultivate. As for the true experts, most of them were the latter. Thinking about it this way, it wasn't completely incomprehensible for the other party to have achieved so much. On the other side, after Lin Wanyu left, Qin Shujian immediately started cultivating. The next morning, due to the auction, Lin Wanyu had to preside over some matters. Therefore, he asked the attendant to knock on the door and remind Qin Shujian to prepare to attend the auction. After a simple freshening up, Qin Shujian followed the attendant and walked around before arriving at the shop that he had entered the day before. Then, he walked up the stairs to the 3rd level and entered a room. The room wasn't big, but one could see what was outside through the window screen. Looking down through the window screen, one could see a few rows of seats below and an auction stage in front of them. At the moment, someone was already standing on the stage. The attendant beside him said, "Sect Master Qin, this is the auction venue. When the auction starts later, different treasures will be auctioned off. If you have an item that you like, you can bid directly. If you don't have enough cash, the chief steward has instructed that you can make up for it after the auction." "Thank you." Also, the window screen can only be seen from the inside. It can't be seen from the outside. I'll wait outside the door. If Sect Master Qin needs anything, please let me know. After the attendant finished speaking, he respectfully left the room and closed the door. At this moment, Qin Shujian retracted his gaze and looked around the room carefully. Although the room wasn't big, the decorations were extremely exquisite. There were fruits and snacks on the table, and, smelling the fragrance of the tea, he could basically conclude that it was spirit tea. Regarding this, Qin Shujian was quite satisfied. Disregarding everything else, the Chung Transport Company had done a good job in terms of etiquette. Even the attendants and servants, it was hard to find any fault with the etiquette. Sitting down, while drinking the spirit tea, he looked down at the auction venue through the window screen. At this moment, people had arrived one after another. The few rows of seats were no longer empty. Then, Qin Shujian's ears twitched slightly. He heard a slight sound from the side. It could be inferred that someone else had entered the other rooms. From the attendant's words and the size of the auction venue, there shouldn't be too many rooms. They should only be reserved for those who could afford the price or had a distinguished status. For the latter, Qin Shujian, on the other hand, agreed more. After all, he was the sect master of Yuan sect. Those third-rate sects couldn't compare to him. I'm very honored that everyone can attend the auction of the Chung Transport Company today. I won't say much. I'm sure everyone is waiting anxiously. Now, the auction officially begins. Below, a slightly hunchbacked old man in brocade clothes stepped forward. His voice was as loud as a bell. As the other party's words fell, 2 beautiful women in light muslin clothes worked together to carry a long brocade box up. With the appearance of the 2 women, the atmosphere in the auction venue seemed to warm up. Level 10 Basic Martial Realm and Level 4 True Martial Realm? Qin Shujian scanned with his spiritual eye. He had already seen the attributes of the other party. The auctioneer was Yu Shihong. He was at Level 4 True Martial Realm and had just reached the Inner Invulnerability Realm. As for the 2 beautiful women, they were also at Level 10 Basic Martial Realm. Just from these 2 points, it could be seen that the strength of this branch was quite strong. At this moment, Yu Shihong had already opened the brocade box, revealing a silver-long spear. He immediately said in a deep voice, The Tongxian ice-breaking spear is a weapon made of top-quality materials and forged by skilled craftsmen. It's a second-grade refined weapon. The starting price is 30,000 taels of silver. Each increment must be no less than 1,000 taels of silver. As soon as he finished speaking, someone immediately shouted a price. 31,000 taels of silver. 32,000 taels of silver. 41,000 taels of silver. In a short time, the price directly soared from 30,000 taels of silver to 41,000 taels of silver, and it showed no signs of stopping as people continued to bid. In the room, Qin Shujian sipped his spirit tea, ignoring the intense emotions of the crowd below. To put it bluntly, a second-grade refined weapon spear was simply not enough to enter his eyes. Even for Yuan Zong, there were many weapons of this level. Rather than spending money to buy it, it was better to go to other sects when he was free. Qin Shujian immediately suppressed the thought that popped up in his mind. This was an auction, and everyone was competing with money. It was not the time to compete with their fists. Soon, the Tongxian ice-breaking spear was bought by one person at the price of 73,000 taels of silver. For this price, Qin Shujian also thought it was reasonable. After all, the price of a second-grade refined weapon was around 50,000 taels of silver. The Tongxian ice-breaking spear was obviously stronger than the average second-grade refined weapon and could be regarded as a fine product. Although 70,000 taels of silver was a little premium, the difference was not big. When an item was sold, soon, the bidding for the second item began. Next, Qin Shujian was in a state of watching the show. He did not participate in the bidding for any item. It was not because he had no money. It was simply because the items being auctioned were not good enough for him. However, Qin Shujian also noticed something. That was, until now, the people who were bidding were the people below. No one in the surrounding rooms made a sound. "Come in," Qin Shujian shouted. The attendant waiting outside immediately pushed the door open and asked respectfully, "Sect Master Qin, what are your orders? I would like to ask, how many items are there in this auction?" "There are a total of 53 items in this auction." 53 items? But if Sect Master Qin wants to know the specific items, you can only look at the illustrated handbook on the table. "I have no right to know," the attendant replied respectfully. Illustrated handbook? Qin Shujian's gaze stopped on the table for a while before he finally saw a small booklet on the side. "Then there is nothing else. Then I will go out first." The attendant did not say anything more and left respectfully again, closing the door behind him. Subsequently, Qin Shujian picked up the booklet on the table with an embarrassed look on his face. He miscalculated. Just now, his attention was on the auction and the items on the table were attracted by the spirit tea. He actually neglected this booklet. Opening the first page of the booklet, what came into view was the newly auctioned mystic ice-breaking spear. There was a detailed introduction of this weapon, as well as the starting price. After glancing at it briefly, Qin Shujian continued to flip through the booklet. As for the auction going on below, he temporarily ignored it. When he was seriously flipping through the booklet, he found that the items auctioned this time were not simple. At the beginning, the mystic ice-breaking spear was the worst. Later, there were even first-grade refined weapons and low-grade spiritual weapons. Low-grade spiritual weapon? Seeing this, Qin Shujian was slightly stunned. After reading the introduction of the item, he found that this was different from the low-grade spiritual weapon he imagined. It was different from the spiritual weapon that the sect suppressed and finally entered the spiritual weapon grade. The low-grade spiritual weapon in the booklet was man-made. Although its power was not much worse than the spiritual weapon that suppressed the luck, there was still a big difference in essence. The former could only kill the enemy. The latter could improve the sect's luck. In terms of preciousness, naturally, the latter was several times better than the former. Chapter 201. The auction went on. As more and more precious items were auctioned off, more and more people competed for them. Even the people in the side rooms were no longer watching. At this point, they were no longer watching from the sidelines. Instead, they started to bid one after another. Qin Shujian finally found what he was looking for on the 38th to 39th page of the booklet. The Foundry Ancestral Cannon. The Celestial Light Alchemy Book. The booklet was categorized as an auxiliary martial art. However, the grade surprised him. The former was a low-grade spirit level. The latter was a middle-grade spirit level. Any martial art that touched the spirit level was extremely precious in the True Dominion. However, the starting price of these two martial arts left Qin Shujian a little dumbfounded. It was not too high. It was too low. The starting price was 50,000 taels of silver. One had to know that the price of a low-grade true-level martial art was around 50,000 taels of silver. A better martial art could reach 70,000 taels of silver or even 100,000 taels of silver. In comparison, the starting price of the two spirit-level martial arts was 50,000 taels of silver. That was a little too low. Qin Shujian flipped to the back of the booklet. There were more precious items at the back of the booklet. For example, there were high-grade true-level cultivation techniques, low-grade spirit weapons, and even exotic flowers and fruits that could enhance one's cultivation. However, there were no exceptions. The starting price of these items was higher than that of the two spirit-level martial arts. This time, we are auctioning a long sword called the Long Abyss Sorrowful Swan. It is currently a half-step spirit weapon. However, it has been appraised by the Foundry Master. If it can be nourished with quintessential essence day and night, there is a chance that it can be upgraded to a low-grade spirit weapon. The starting price is 200,000 taels of silver. Each bid must be at least 10,000 taels of silver. As soon as he finished speaking, someone immediately bid 300,000 taels of silver, 350,000 taels of silver, 370,000 taels of silver. Without any pause, the price soared all the way to 500,000 taels of silver. At this point, Qin Shujian also secretly clicked his tongue. A half-step spirit weapon was so expensive. It was beyond his expectations. However, he could understand it on second thought. A half-step spirit weapon might not be that precious. However, when the other party said that there was a chance that it could be upgraded to a low-grade spirit weapon, the price soared. It was different from a sharp weapon. Any weapon that entered the ranks of spiritual weapons could not be mentioned in the same breath. 700,000 taels. A voice slowly came from the side room, but after a long time, it was drowned out by other voices. 750,000. 770,000. 800,000. The price continued to rise, and soon it was close to 1 million taels of silver. At this time, the bidding slowed down significantly. After all, it was only a half-step spiritual weapon and not a true spiritual weapon. Even if there was a slight possibility of it being upgraded, no one could be sure how long it would take. Spending a few 100,000 taels to gamble was already the limit. The higher the price, the higher the premium. That was not worth it at all. In the end, the price of this half-step spirit tool stopped at 1,130,000 taels, and the person in the room got it. They're all rich. Qin Shujian sighed with emotion. Right now, the amount of silver that Yuan Zong could take out was less than 2 million. Now, a single half-step spirit artifact had practically taken out all of Yuan Zong's assets. At first, he thought that he was quite rich. Now that he made a comparison, he suddenly realized. So, he was still a poor man. Looking at the 1 million taels of silver in the storage ring, Qin Shujian was a little uneasy now. Originally, according to his plan, this amount of silver was more than enough to buy the two martial arts. But looking at the current situation, if a rich man intervened, it was still a problem whether the 1 million taels of silver would be enough. After the successful auction of a half-step spirit artifact, the auction had entered a new climax. With the auction of one item after another, the prices were sold again and again. Qin Shujian only felt that his heart was also being attacked by the rich people all the time. At last, he came to a conclusion. Among the people present, if it was a competition of poverty, no one was a match for him. After the auction of one item, Qin Shujian was suddenly refreshed. His eyes looked through the window screen, watching the movement in the auction room. He saw that another woman in gauze handed over a sandalwood box of about 1 foot in size. After Yu Shihong took the box, he immediately said in a clear voice, as we all know, except for the spirit artifacts that are bred by heaven and earth, Only a master of forging with superb skills is qualified to forge a peerless spirit artifact. Now, I have a forging method in my hands, and its grade is as high as the low grade of the spiritual level. Anyone who gets it has a chance to become a master of forging. Now the starting price is 50,000 taels of silver, and each bid must not be less than 10,000 taels of silver. The scene suddenly became silent, and there was no passion at all. Yushihong smiled, but he was a little embarrassed in his heart. If it was other martial arts of the low grade of the spiritual level, not to mention 5 taels, even if it was 500,000 taels of silver, there would definitely be a large number of people scrambling to bid. But this was a martial art of forging. Anyone could know. Forging and alchemy were two big pits in the cultivation world. To achieve something, one must continuously invest resources, and such investment was far from the value of 1 or 2 martial arts could replace. Even a family or a sect may not be able to cultivate a master of alchemy and a master of forging even if they exhausted all their resources. If they could not become a master, even if they were cultivated, it would be of no use. There was once a sect that spent tens of millions of taels of silver, and in the end, only managed to cultivate a middle-grade alchemist who could only refine pills suitable for the basic martial realm. In the end, that sect directly declined, and until now, it had already disappeared into the crowd. Similar to such an example, it was everywhere in the cultivation world. Therefore, a forging method was not a problem of 50,000 taels of silver, but after bidding for it, one would need to spend a lot of money to fill this big hole. Just as Yushihong was about to open his mouth to break the silence, a voice directly broke the silence of the scene. 60,000 taels. When the voice came out, many people looked at the position of a certain wing room. They all wanted to know which force was so confident that they dared to take down a big pit in the cultivation world. Unfortunately, with the window screen blocking, they could not see anything. 60,000 taels once. 60,000 taels twice. Sold. Yushihong saw that no one was bidding anymore, and he simply ended the bidding. Then he began to auction the next item. In the wing room, Qin Shujian's mouth revealed a smile. 60,000 taels of silver to buy a low-grade spiritual level forging method. He had to say that it was completely beyond his expectations. He also did not expect. No one wanted this kind of thing at all. Looking at the storage ring, he could still use more than 900,000 taels. The next celestial light alchemy tome would not be a big problem. Then, Yushihong also began the auction of the next item. The starting price of the celestial light alchemy tome was also 50,000 taels, perhaps because of the mid-grade spiritual level. This time, not long after the auction began, someone called out a price. Qin Shujian sat still, letting others call out a price bit by bit. When it was about time, he directly opened his mouth and said, 100,000 taels of silver. 150,000 taels. Soon, another voice drowned out his bid, 200,000 taels. Suddenly being overshadowed by someone, Qin Shujian's expression was not good. Looking through the window screen, the voice came from another wing room. What was the meaning of this? Could it be that no one wanted the forging method, but now someone wanted to compete for the alchemy method? Looking at the silver taels in the storage ring, Qin Shujian's heart settled and continued to call out, 210,000 taels. 300,000 taels. 310,000 taels. 400,000 taels. Bang! Qin Shujian's face was filled with anger as he heavily slammed his palm on the table. What was the meaning of this? Clearly, they were using money to suppress him. Thinking about how he, Sect Master Qin, had been in the cultivation world for so long, he had never been despised in terms of money. In the other wing room, a middle-aged man and an old man were sitting there. The middle-aged man's clothes were luxurious, and each of his thumbs was wearing a thick jade ring. He laughed at the old man beside him. Old Gu, you can rest assured. Whether it is money or strength, the Nine Rivers sect has never been afraid of anyone. This time, the Celestial Light Alchemy Tome will definitely be in our pockets. With Sect Master Li here, this old man naturally believes. Old Gu's face also had a faint smile. At this moment, in the other wing room, Qin Shujian forcibly suppressed his anger and continued to call out, 410,000 taels. 50. I am Sky Origin, Qin Shujian. Are you willing to give me some face? Sect Master Li and Old Goo's faces stiffened. They originally planned to continue to call out the price, but they stopped. Sky Origin, Qin Shujian. Now, Li Fei had an impulse to turn around and leave. Just now, he had boasted in front of the other party that he would definitely be able to obtain the Celestial Light Alchemy Tome. But now, he felt as if something was stuck in his throat, and he couldn't call out the price no matter how hard he tried. Not only him, even Old Goo's face was ugly. In the end, he shook his head and sighed. Forget it, Sect Master Li. We don't need the Celestial Light Alchemy Tome. Then we will do as Old Goo says. Li Fei immediately took advantage of the situation, but at the same time, there was still some lingering fear in his heart. What kind of person was Qin Shujian? He was the kind of person who would bear a grudge if there was a little dispute. Many people had already found out the reason for the destruction of the 7 sects. It was just that when they were exploring the treasure land, there was a fight over the spiritual item. Then, after Sect Master Qin got the spiritual item, he went back and led the experts of the sect to destroy all the sects that participated in the fight. If they were to be hated by Qin Shujian because of the competition for an alchemy method in the auction, Li Fei thought of this. His heart trembled slightly. Then he would really be sorry to the ancestors of the 9 Rivers sect. At this moment, not only Li Fei and the others, but the entire auction house was silent. The simple sentence just now had given everyone a great shock. No one expected. Even Sky Origin's sect master was here. Chapter 202. After a friendly negotiation, Qin Shujian bought the Celestial Light Alchemy book at the price of 410,000 taels of silver. Indeed, being angry will only lead to a lose-lose situation. Only a friendly negotiation can lead to a win-win situation. After sighing with emotion, he shouted and the attendant outside the door immediately came in. Do you know who's in that room? Sect Master Qin, the identities of the guests in the room are confidential. I don't know either. The attendant replied respectfully. That's all. I'll take my leave. The attendant retreated. Qin Shujian's gaze landed on the room where the voice had come from. For a moment, no one knew what he was thinking. Meanwhile, after the auction of the Celestial Light Alchemy book ended, the next round of auction immediately began. However, Qin Shujian's words made many people feel uneasy. Origin sect. Although he had not done anything else after the 7 sects had been annihilated, this did not mean that they had forgotten the existence of this colossus. On the contrary, the more Origin sect remained silent, the more the other powers guessed and thought about what Origin sect would do next. After all, this was a power that was already an overlord of the true dominion. No matter what they thought, it was unlikely that they would be willing to stay in a remote place like the true dominion of the Liang Mountain. If Origin sect was determined to leave the true dominion of the Liang Mountain, then who would he point his blade at? Now that Qin Shujian had come to the Mystic Void True Dominion, could he have set his sights on this area? For a moment, many people made wild guesses in their hearts. Very few people bid for the next few auction items. Basically, they stopped when it was about time. When Yu Shihong saw this, he immediately waved his hand to get someone to come up and whispered something in his ear. Very soon then, he saw a jade-green box being carried up. Perhaps it was because the box made entirely of jade had attracted attention or for some other reason, but everyone, who had been a little distracted, now focused their gazes. Yu Shihong was quite satisfied with this effect. Then, he said loudly, the item being auctioned this time is the low-grade spirit artifact, the Wangqing sword. It belonged to the spirit martial realm cultivator, Dao Lord Wangqing. After Dao Lord Wangqing passed away, the Wangqing sword disappeared without a trace. Now, after many twists and turns, it was finally obtained by someone else and finally appeared in the auction. The starting price is 2 million taels, and each bid must be at least 100,000 taels. Boom! As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's emotions were ignited. The fear that had been brought about by Qin Shujian also disappeared completely under the bombardment of the low-grade spiritual weapon. Low-grade spirit weapon. It was a treasure that could be used to guard a sect or clan. Even if these man-made spiritual artifacts did not have the effect of suppressing fate, the power of the spiritual artifacts alone was enough to protect the continuation of the sect and the safety of future generations. In the true dominion, a spiritual weapon was more terrifying than a cultivator in the 10th level of the martial realm. In the spiritual realm, only a portion of spirit martial realm cultivators could use spirit weapons as weapons. It could be said that spirit weapons were considered priceless in the true dominion. Even if you had the money, you might not be able to buy it. Occasionally, a few spirit weapons would appear at the Chongyun Trading Company's auction. However, every time they appeared, many factions would fight over them. The auction had been going on for so long. Many forces had participated in the bidding, but none of them had actually made a deal. They had done so because they wanted to preserve their strength and compete for the ownership of the spiritual artifacts. When the jade box was opened, a sinister chill instantly filled the entire venue. Everyone's eyes were burning with passion as they started bidding crazily. As for Qin Shujian, he was now just watching the show. Half of the silver he had brought had already been used up. The remaining silver was not even enough to cover the starting price of the spiritual artifacts. Therefore, he could only watch. However, he was already satisfied that he had been able to obtain the 2 cultivation techniques. As for the rest, there was no need for him to participate. However, Qin Shujian looked at the faces of the people who were bidding fiercely and memorized them. Then, he looked at the other rooms through the window screen and silently observed the people who were bidding fiercely and were richer. When he had the chance, he also wanted to find out where these people were from. There was no other reason. He just liked to be friends with rich people. Although the origin sect was poor, its strength was not bad. It would not be too degrading to be friends with rich people. By the time the auction ended, Yi Zichen had already made his decision. Someone knocked on the door. After receiving permission, someone immediately came in and brought the 2 martial arts techniques that Qin Shujian had obtained from the auction. After seeing the 2 martial arts techniques, Qin Shujian did not open them immediately. Instead, he waved his hand and threw out more than 400,000 taels of silver from the storage ring. Then, the room was filled to the brim with silver. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned and stood rooted to the ground. No one expected that silver would appear out of thin air. Even more so, they did not expect that Qin Shujian did not bring banknotes. Instead, he brought more than 400,000 taels of silver. Fortunately, the quality of the room was good. Or else, this pile of silver alone would probably crush the floor of the room. Seeing this, Yu Shihong quickly recovered from his daze and said with a smile, "Sect leader Qin is so straightforward." He was able to host the auction and naturally had a lot of experience. Although the storage ring was precious, it was not very rare for the Chongyun Trading Company. Qin Shujian said, "I only brought cash with me. You can count it." "There's no need to count it. We naturally trust sect leader Qin's reputation." Yu Shihong stepped forward. The ring on his ring finger flashed slightly, and more than 400,000 taels of silver were immediately collected into it. A storage ring? Seeing this, Qin Shujian was not too surprised. The Chongyun Trading Company was a big business. It would be strange if they did not have a storage ring. After the money was settled, Qin Shujian continued, "I would like to meet the person who auctioned these 2 martial arts techniques. I wonder if your company could introduce me to him. I can ask on your behalf. However, I can't guarantee the details. It's best if this matter can be done. It doesn't matter if it can't." "That's good. Sect leader Qin, please wait here for a while. I'll be back soon." Yu Shihong heard this and immediately stood up to leave. Qin Shujian did not stop him. Instead, he returned to his original position and looked at the 2 martial arts once again. Celestial Light Alchemy Scroll. Ancestral Book of Casting. After making sure that no one was watching, he directly opened the 2 martial arts techniques. You've learned Celestial Light Alchemy Tome of Spiritual Class. You've learned Celestial Light Alchemy Tome of Forging. Suddenly, A large amount of knowledge appeared in his mind. However, it seemed to be suppressed very quickly. Only a small part of it remained. Then, Qin Shujian looked at his own attributes. Under martial arts, there was a new column. Special martial arts. Celestial Light Alchemy Tome, Celestial Light Alchemist, Ancestral Tome of Forging, Celestial Light Alchemist, Celestial Light Alchemist, and Celestial Light Alchemist? When Qin Shujian recalled the contents of these two special martial arts techniques, he realized that he could only view the contents of Celestial Light Alchemist and Celestial Light Alchemist. Moreover, he seemed to have memorized them and practiced them thousands of times. When he wanted to view the contents beyond Celestial Light Alchemist and Celestial Light Alchemist, he realized that he could not do so at all. It seems that special martial arts techniques are somewhat different from normal martial arts techniques. I need to improve and unseal them step by step before I can fully master them. However, now I can be considered as an alchemist and Celestial Light Alchemist. Qin Shujian felt the knowledge about alchemy and Celestial Light Alchemist and Celestial Light Alchemist, although he could only get a part of the initial content. However, he was not too worried. As long as he had enough life source, he would not be afraid of not being able to improve the level and unseal the content. The only thing he had to consider now was how to find the right person for these two martial arts techniques. After all, as a sect master, it was impossible for him to not do business every day and just stay in the sect to refine pills and refine weapons. That was impossible. All of a sudden, Qin Shujian looked at the position of the door. He sensed two auras approaching, but none of them belonged to Yu Shihong or Lin Wanyu. In fact, they didn't even belong to anyone who had just appeared. There was no knock on the door. Subtle footsteps finally stopped at the door. Then, a respectful voice came. 9 Rivers Sect Master Li Fei and Elder Gu Sheng have come to pay respects to Sect Master Qin of Yuan Sect. 9 Rivers Sect's Li Fei? Just by hearing the other party's voice, he knew who it was. Come in. A faint voice came out. Li Fei and Gu Sheng, who were standing at the door, looked at each other, then pushed the door open and walked in. When they saw Qin Shujian sitting there, they cupped their hands and said politely, "Greetings, Sect Master Qin. I don't remember having any interaction with 9 Rivers Sect. Why did the two of you suddenly come to visit? Previously, I did not know that it was Sect Master Qin who bid. In addition, Elder Gu is also an alchemist, so he bid for the Celestial Light Alchemy Scroll. In order to avoid any misunderstanding, we came to apologize." Li Fei's words were sincere, without the slightest arrogance that a sect master should have. Gu Sheng, who was standing at the side, had the same attitude. Qin Shujian looked at the two, pausing on Gu Sheng for a while. Then, he smiled and said, "It's just a misunderstanding. I am not a petty person. Sect Master Li, you don't have to take it to heart. In the end, it's my fault. I've caused Sect Master Qin to lose hundreds of thousands of silver." While speaking, Li Fei took a step forward and placed a thick stack of silver notes on the table, then retreated. "This is 500,000 silver to cover the cost of the Celestial Light Alchemy Scroll. The remaining tens of thousands of silver is for our first meeting. I specially gave it to Sect Master Qin. I'm afraid it's not good. This is 9 Rivers Sect's and Li's goodwill. I hope Sect Master Qin will not refuse." "Fine." Qin Shujian reached out and took the silver notes, then put them away. The smile on his face became more sincere. Since it's Sect Master Li's goodwill, it would be ungrateful of me to refuse. I see that Sect Master Qin has other things to do, so we won't disturb you any longer. In the future, if Sect Master Qin has time, you can come to 9 Rivers Sect at any time. I will definitely welcome you." After speaking, Li Fei and Gu Sheng bid farewell and left. It was as if the two of them came here just to give him money. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.